Okay, we are live.
Wonderful. So before calling the meeting to order, I'll ask the commissioners to refrain from using the chat feature on Zoom. All questions should be made publicly unless it is a computer or connectivity issue. We have a note to call to order. And waiting for the staff. I think you just confirmed YouTube live stream and Zoom recording.
Right.
Thank you. So I'll call to order here. Good morning, everyone. The hybrid meeting of the Cultural Resources Commission will now come to order. Quorum has been established with 5 members in attendance. Today is Wednesday, June 21st, 2023. It is 10:06 a.m. Pursuant to
Chair's Chairman, 6 members quorum.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have Nicole now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not seeing her on my slide. Hey, Nicole. Thank you. Cool. We have 6. Hi. Okay. Correcting that, we have quorum has been established with 6 members in attendance. Thank you, Kevin. Pursuant to Act 220, Session Laws of Hawaii 2021, which amended the Sunshine Law to allow meetings to be remotely conducted online, effective January 1st, 2022, the Cultural Resources Commission will host a hybrid meeting of online and in-person participants. An in-person location has been identified on the agenda for the public to provide testimony on agenda items and to view the meeting. This meeting can also be viewed live online. A link to the YouTube live stream is provided on the county website. The video recording will remain on the YouTube channel for those who are not able to watch it live. Reports and surveys reviewed during this hearing are available on the county website. Commissioners, please be reminded that only one person may speak at a time. Raise your hand to be recognized if you have a question or comment. I'd like to move into introductions. Commissioners, please introduce yourselves and report if others are present in your location. I'll start. My name is Aaron Spielman. I'm the chair of the Cultural Resources Commission, and I may be opening the door behind me to let my dogs in and out, but no one else is here with me today. And I'll pass to Natalie next, and we can go around to the other members.
I'll call Natalie Kurashima. No one else is with me today.
Matthew Clark.
Aloha, Matthew Clark. I am alone in my office today. Mahalo, Chair.
Thanks, Matt. We have a couple members absent. Keola. Sorry, Mr. Kinney.
Hi, aloha, good morning. My name is Kealoha Kini, and there's no one present in my hallway today. Thank you.
Sorry, Kealoha. Sorry about that. Mr. Mahoney.
Yep, aloha, Scott Mahoney. I'm alone here in Mayo right now by myself.
Thank you. Nicole.
Aloha, good morning. I'm with my mom this morning.
Okay, thank you. And Kim, can you confirm, is Desmond going to be joining us today?
I did not hear from him. I don't believe he'll be joining today.
Okay, thank you very much. We have CRC staff supporting joining us today are Kevin Sullivan, planner, Alex Gherkin, planner, Kim Tanaka, board secretary. And for Corporation Counsel today, we have Sinclair Salas Ferguson. And public testimony pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statutes 92-3. Interested persons that want to provide oral testimony may do so either at the time the board takes public statements on the agenda or at the time the specific agenda item is called. Staff, please indicate if there are any members of the public wishing to provide testimony online or in person.
Yes, Chair, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members of the public in person wishing to provide testimony. And I do not see anyone online at the moment providing testimony yet.
Okay, thank you. So for public testimony, in accordance with the CRC Rule 1-7D3. I can place a reasonable time limit on the public testimony, and we're going to look at 3 minutes today. And Corporation Counsel may weigh in when that 3 minutes testifying time has exceeded. I just ask that if we can keep all the testifying to 3 minutes, that would be very helpful. And at some point following the 3 minutes, we'll have to make a cutoff. Thank you for understanding. I think we're getting into business of the commission, and we're looking at the agenda for old business. Am I in the right spot, Kim?
Chair, if you would like to call for testimony right now, you can, if anyone needs to leave prior to the agenda item being called.
Okay, understood.
Sorry. So you guys can give testimony now before we start the agenda altogether, or you can wait until that specific agenda item. My assumption is that all of you here are here for the second agenda item, the Kona 3. Is that an accurate assumption? Okay, so it's up to
Mr.
you.
Chair, I'm Joel Gimple. I had indicated that I would like to provide oral testimony as well. I'm online.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes, I have your name here. Thank you, Mr. Gimble.
And good morning, Chair Spielman. This is Deputy Corporation Sinclair Sauls Ferguson. If you could just clarify with all of the testifiers when they'd like to testify.
Okay, so as Kevin was mentioning, we could testify before the agenda item is called, or we can open testifying now, and I'm happy with that.
So
If
Mr. Gimple, if you can just clarify when he wants to testify on what item.
I'd like to testify on item number 2 at the present time.
Understood. Thank you. Well, Kevin and Kim, if you guys are good with this, I'd like to go ahead and call for testifying on let's start with item number 1. If there's anybody testifying for item number 1, we'll go ahead and let them speak now. And if no one's testifying here for agenda item number 1, we can open up for testifying on agenda item number 2. We can go ahead and do that now in your order of preference.
Yeah, I believe the preference, if I heard Mr. Gimple right, he would like to go ahead and provide his testimony now. The members of the public that are with me, I believe, are indicating they want to wait until the item.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Kevin. Mr. Gimple, we'll go ahead and call on you to testify on item number 2.
Thank you. As a retired attorney and longtime recognizer of the time constraints, I'll try and be brief. Mahalo for the report on the March 23rd site visit to the subject property. My wife and I were saddened to learn that Mr. Wheelock was injured when attempting to access the property and hope that he has fully recovered. Your report notes a number of archaeological features, some of which had not been charted, that merit thorough study. Those features include the site walls and trail makai of the railroad and the possible home site with the pohaku near the terraced area. It was also reported that time should be allotted for access to the entire property for all permitted interaction group members. The half-hour visit in March was clearly insufficient to thoroughly examine the entire property. So we trust that your final report to the Leeward Planning Commission will cover all of the historical, archaeological, and cultural features on the property, as well as the unique flora and fauna, including the hoary bat, that require preservation and protection. Aloha, and thank you for your careful consideration of this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Gimple. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
So my understanding is we're going to wait on the other testifiers until the agenda item is called. Is that correct? Kevin?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I would like to move into the business of the commission. Old business. We have a We have a report from the Permitted Interaction Subcommittee regarding the site visit conducted for the Ho'omalu Workforce Housing Project in Waikoloa, PL-CRC-2023-00005, location Waikoloa, Ahupua'a, South Kohala District, Island of Hawaiʻi, TMK 36-9-008:032. I'll ask again, just in case anybody came, but is any member of the public wishing to provide testimony on this agenda item? Okay, that's a negative. What we'd like to do here is just lay out the groundwork here. It's that in accordance with the Hawaii Revised Statute, section 92-2.5, the commission will only receive the report from the Permitted Interaction Subcommittee. No questions, discussion, or decisions will take place at today's hearing. The subcommittee report is provided as information only at this time. And the next scheduled meeting will provide for discussion on this matter. I'd like to call on Matt Clark, although I don't recall the other members of his PIG, and please, it's all yours, Matt.
Thanks, Chair. Am I able to share my screen for this to share a couple images while I'm talking?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. Aloha CRC. This is a report from the Permitted Interaction Subcommittee regarding a site visit conducted on May 26, 2023 to the proposed Ho'omalu at Waikoloa Workforce Housing Project in Waikoloa, Ahupua'a, South Kohala District, Island of Hawaii. Up on the screen, you see a map of the project area that was provided by the developers, Stanford Carr, at the site visit, showing the proposed development, the existing infrastructure, and the areas of archaeological preserve. At its May 10th, 2023 meeting, the County of Hawaii Cultural Resources Commission reviewed and discussed potential impacts to cultural, archaeological, and/or historic resources within the proposed Ho'omalu Workforce Housing Project in Waikoloa. The proposed project was brought before the CRC at the request of the State Historic Preservation Division, who, after an initial review of an archaeological inventory survey prepared for the subject parcel, and citing the abundance of features and feature types contained within the project area, asked that additional consultation be included in the AIS report. The CRC was one of the groups specifically named by SHPD for additional consultation. During the May 10, 2023 CRC meeting, representatives of the developer, Stanford Carr Development, and their consulting archaeological firm, Hahn & Associates, presented information regarding the proposed Ho'omalu at Waikoloa Workforce Housing Project and the findings of the AIS. The project proposes to build 229 affordable housing units, which will be 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments within the roughly 25-acre subject parcel that would be sold at 30 to 100% of the area's median income, and would remain affordable for up to 65 years. The AIS identified 4 sites containing a total of 10,435 features within the 25-acre subject parcel. Hold on, I have the site map here. If I can get there. Sorry, I can't seem to change my slide. Here we go. There's a picture of the archaeological site map. The site includes 2 temporary habitation overhangs, a temporary habitation lava tube, a trail, and a complex of 10,431 tool manufacture, reef source procurement, temporary habitation, rock art, transportation, and marker features that extend throughout most of the parcel. The identified sites were assessed for significance based on Hawaii Administrative Rules, Chapter 13, 284-6, and found to be variously significant for the information they have yielded, for their cultural value to the Hawaiian people, and as excellent examples of site types. Here's a list of the various sites and their features showing the numbers. 2 of the sites were recommended for preservation or partial preservation, and the developer has agreed to set aside portions of all 4 sites, including combined 2,373 features, within a 3.8 acre preserve area located in the western portion of the parcel. This is the proposed development showing the preservation areas. As a result of the May 10th, 2023 CRC meeting, the commissioners voted to form a permitted interaction subcommittee to visit the parcel and the identified cultural sites on behalf of the entire CRC. The purpose of the permitted interaction subcommittee site visit, as articulated during the meeting, was to further investigate the parcel for design review and the consideration of SHPD comments. On May 26, 2023, members of the CRC Permitted Interaction Subcommittee conducted a site visit to the proposed Ho'omalo workforce housing project in Waikoloa. 4 members of the CRC, Natalie Kurishima, Kealoha Kini, Ku'ule Kekealani, and Matthew Clark, were present along with representatives of the developer and their consulting archaeological firm. The site visit commenced at 10 a.m. and concluded at 12 p.m. To kick off the meeting, CRC member Ku'ule Kekealani led the group in an oli to acknowledge the mo'ohau of Kohala and Kona that was followed by a moment of silence observed in respect of the Aina and those that came before. This was followed by a brief introduction to the proposed project and parcel presented by the developers and the archaeologists, and a tour of the project area that was guided by Mr. Solomon Kalihiva of Hanan Associates. The tour included an on-site review of cultural features within the proposed preservation area, as well as in the area proposed for development. The primary focus of this time was to explore and better understand the cultural features, function, and heritage of this area, and the efforts taken to preserve it, mitigate its proposed destruction. Stanford Car Development provided maps of the project area at the outset of the tour, which was the first slide I showed. During the tour, the CRC Permitted Interaction Subcommittee hiked on rocky, uneven terrain, densely covered with archaeological features that have been marked with pieces of flagging tied to small rocks, many of which were related to a braider manufacturer. This is a photo of the general project area and in the preserve. And here we have some of the braider manufacturer features. Solomon shared detailed information about what archaeologists think the prehistoric function and context of the quarry may have been in their understanding of the process of making abrader tools. The subcommittee participants were able to view areas where abraders were quarried, as well as areas where abraders were honed and shaped, and were also able to examine abrader samples that ranged from partially finished to complete. Here's an example of some of the abrader material at the site. Approximately 1 hour was spent within the roughly 3.8 acre area proposed for the set aside for cultural heritage preservation by the developers. Within the preserve area, a trail and a unique complex of about 50 circle-shaped temporary habitation features with floors lined with small rocks were pointed out, and it was suggested that these habitation features were possibly for soldiers of an army that had spent the night there. On the photo to the left is one of those types of features. Petroglyphs were examined and their meanings contemplated, and features for which purpose remains largely uncertain were discussed. A petroglyph within the site area is shown there in the picture to the right. The second hour was spent within the area of the proposed development, where in general there appeared to be more trash, likely due to its proximity to Queens Marketplace and to previously bulldozed roads. Although there were many abrader quarry features in this area, they appeared to be less dense than in the preserve area. Mr. Kalihiva pointed out several areas that had been disturbed by prior bulldozing or other activities. There also appeared to be evidence of vandalism, modern quarrying and drilling, and vehicular damage to some of the pohaku in the area. During the site visit, several members of the group shared their mana'o and discussed the importance of this area, its location along the boundary between Kona and Kohala along the route of a major trail, as well as its history and connection with other cultural sites and landmarks in the Kona-Kohala region and further abroad. One saying, "Le'i o Kohala I ka nuku o Nakanaka," speaks to the extraordinary nature of Kohala and its people. Based on the site visit, the following topics of discussion are suggested for the next CRC meeting. What are the Hawaiian names for abrader stones? How are these items traded? Was the production of abraders overseen by an elite of this place? Preserving function of place. Are there traditional users of abraders today? How do we preserve access and support traditional intelligence and engineering now and into the future? Recommendations regarding other knowledgeable individuals to consult. This development needs to be thought about in the context of cumulative impacts of development in the area. There needs to be long-term planning for preservation at the landscape level. Recommendations for language regarding the perpetuity of the preservation action specific to the proposed development. It's currently unclear if the sites to be preserved are to be done so in perpetuity. Site significance and mitigation. Specific recommendations for SHPD regarding the AIS, the proposed development, and the treatments of sites within the area. Preservation planning, providing interpretation and educational materials about the uniqueness of this site to schools and those living in the area. Creating on-site and traveling Koehana artifact displays showing the different stages of abrader manufacture. Additional research on abraders, perhaps funding research to look at certain woodwork in Bishop Museum at a microscopic level to tell types of abraders that were used, and other topics of discussion and questions for the CRC Permitted Interaction Subcommittee members. In conclusion, the CRC Permitted Interaction Subcommittee members would like to thank Stanford Car Development and Hahn & Associates for their time and the opportunity to visit the subject parcel, as well as for the guided tour of the proposed development area and the cultural sites. We look forward to discussing this project further at our next meeting. Mahalo.
Thank you, Matt. Great report. Thank you very much. So we've completed item number 1 on the agenda. We're looking at item number 2 on the agenda. And I think I'd like to call for public testifiers this time, Kevin and Kim.
Okay, understood. I'm gonna do it in order of, yeah. And at the computer, yeah. Or
No,
not,
here.
just in here's fine. Okay, so, first, testifier, we have is Diane Lancet. Please speak into the mic. Clearly. The record, and, you know. 3 minutes.
And Chair, Deputy Corporations Counsel Sinclair Salas Ferguson, since you asked that I time the 3 minutes, I'll give them a warning when 30 seconds is left in the testimony time, okay?
Thank you. And I think I'd like to say like 3 minutes is good. And if we get to like 3:30, there's probably a reasonable cutoff. And if you can give them that notice, that would be great. Thank you.
Aloha, my name is Diane Blansett Maddock. My husband David and I live in Kona, near the proposed development. The last meeting, we listened to 2 commissioners report on their impressions of the site visit, and we read the written report, which chronicled a very small portion of the site. It was very exciting to hear about their experience. One can only imagine the cultural and historical significance that will be discovered when and if the stewards of this INA have access to the entire 70 acres. Already there are maps identifying 2 historical trails on the north side, one on the north side of the INA and one on the south side. There are also numerous accounts of cultural and historical significance that have been captured through presentations and oral accounts by stewards of the INA. Since this site is already on the PONC list, the county is in the position to negotiate the purchase of this entire INA for preservation for all. As previously noted, the fair market price negotiation would far exceed the purchase price of this approximately $600,000 for the 70 acres that were purchased in 2015. As noted, this site has not been in compliance for development since, I believe, 2012, which is over 10 years ago. I also wanted to add that this site is within a state-identified watersheds. You are in the position to preserve this INA for cultural and historical appreciation into the future. Thank you for your time and consideration. It's an important part of the history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier we have is David Lancet.
Aloha, this is Diane's husband. That's how I'm usually known. I'm a resident and owner, as you know, locally to this. And I'm supporting the preservation of the cultural and historical sites within this development. I have a disclosure to make. The written record is kind of blind because it discloses what's heard, but not what's seen. My Hawaii is my home, and Hawaiians are my family. I'm only a Calabash cousin. My ancestors are the same as the developers. The developers' ancestors are my ancestors. Hawaiians, your ancestors came here, took the land, and made it their home long ago. They created a history with their hands and their children. They built their historical record upon the land with their bare hands, their sweat, and their lives. They stored their record in the trust of their children, their memories, their verbal traditions, song, dance, and story, and they stored them in the roads, trails, and their sacred places of worship, their heiaus and burial sites. The developers' ancestors, my ancestors, also came here. They took the land from the Hawaiians, but they did not necessarily make it their home. They made their ownership something they could control from their homelands and sell in their homelands to ancestors and strangers for profit. They flooded the islands with developers' ancestors who replaced the Hawaiian laws and customs with developers' laws, developer government, and developer courts. Read the thousands of pages of the development record. The dispute here is not whether there are trails, it's whether they are prehistoric trails. I was so stupid when I began this journey. I thought prehistoric meant dinosaurs and cavemen, the Stone, Bronze Age, Iron Age, 2.5 million years to 112 BC. But the experts here today will tell you that prehistoric in Hawaii means existing prior to the written recorded history. All that means is any history before the developers' ancestors, my ancestors, came here and began writing down and recording things in a written record. As soon as the developers, ancestors, and my ancestors took your lands, they declared the Hawaiian people, ancestors, and Hawaiian ancestry to be prehistoric, dinosaurs. Recorded history is a fiction. It's the product of the minds and imaginations of developers and ancestors, created and written down by my ancestors, developers. What mattered to them: railroads, developer bridges, developer highways, easements, and developer properties. It's no mystery that we can't find a lot about Hawaiian history there. Hawaiian history was of little consequence. No one denies that this very site was in the middle of a major population center for the Umi Empire. No one can argue with a straight face that the only trail here is the one developer shows in the written record, which is a trail that now lies buried beneath the developer's first phase. No one can argue with a straight face that a maze of prehistoric trails did not cross these lands. It's simply not true. Developer argues that the trail stopped at the borders of his post-historical property lines.
30 seconds.
Developer argues the historical records in the USGS records are wrong. You don't need developers' recorded history. You saw the trails with your own eyes. The Hawaiian historical record, built by the hands of the Hawaiians, is right there. Your eyes see how the trails connect the trees from the forest to the sacred heiau that bless the production of canoes and farms for the life and blood of the Umi Empire. You know the trails connect to petroglyphs, ancient burial sites, a cave where your ancestors made fishing gear, farming, and myriad of historical cultural treasures of the people. This fiction of prehistoric man is already a developer to dig up and move a Hawaiian mother and her child and plow under the many unrecoverable historical sites within this development. The Hawaiian record's the truth. The Hawaiians lived here and traveled across the land with prehistoric trails they built. The written historical record is biased and incomplete. It lies by omission. If we do not recognize the truth here today, the Hawaiian culture becomes a dinosaur and we will witness extinction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next testifier, please, Kevin.
Sure. Our next testifier is John M. Powell. Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity. I've submitted written testimony. I don't know if you've got it. The pictures were attached. And I'm not going to go over everything, but the first archaeological look at this property looked at 5 acres in the upper portion near the burial site. And they took that 5 acres and they did light probing with the shovels. During that time, they found many artifacts, some old ancient tools, some prehistoric and pre and post contact artifacts. We don't know how many more artifacts are in this property. Nobody does. With that, we still maintain the twin walls of the Holoa slide that brought the logs from the forest down to the heiau, canoe heiau, and then down to the ocean. Also, somebody brought up that they thought and really remembered timbers coming down that very slide into the ocean and floated up into town and used at some of the historical buildings that are in town. There's no doubt that the trails exist because the maps show that they were and they need to be preserved. With that, the neighbors along this property, took pictures of the animals that they could take pictures of. And we know that they live there and they hunt there, no matter what the developer says. Back to one, they claim the trees aren't tall enough, which is not true. Because you look at where the owls live and the hawks and the horay bats, it's there. Also, it's a horay bat birthing ground at a certain time of the year, and also the giant moth. So we know that this was a Hawaiian gathering spot because of the food tables and other artifacts that were there, and also the cultural practices that have been there. So far, 789 people have signed a petition to save this property. And finally, going to the mayor's town hall the other night, the planning director said that there's a new program creating green space and trails between properties and around the island. This is another good point for this property.
30 seconds.
Thank you. I will leave these printed pictures with staff.
Thank you. We'll submit these and
They were in the testimony in color.
we'll make them.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. The next testifier present is Reed Larson.
I'm not
Good pass. Okay. Scratch that. The next testifier signed up is Janice Kerr.
Hello, aloha everyone, and thank you all, members of the commission, for your hard work. So much appreciated. I just want to start by saying that the dictionary defines take a risk as to expose oneself to the chance of loss, which, if they are harmed, will be their own responsibility. Purchasing property with the hope of someday developing it is definitely taking a risk. The more time that elapses between purchasing and starting to build, the riskier it gets. Favorable conditions may deteriorate. New requirements may be added. Additional expenses may be incurred. The climate may change, and so on. The Royal Vistas project is not grounded in community needs or sensitivities. Kona 3 LLC has not been open and honest with the public. They transferred all of their affordable housing credits and will build 0 affordable units. They have falsely certified there are no historically or culturally significant artifacts on their property, not a single element. They have claimed they will contain every drop of water runoff on site, which is impossible. There is no shortage of expensive homes here for rich people to buy. What we need is more affordable homes, so people born and raised here can afford to stay here. There is an out for KB3. They can let the Ponk purchase the land and move on, saving the community from the serious damages from building in a floodplain and destroying important cultural artifacts. I encourage the members of this commission to understand that it is not their responsibility to find a way to make this work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next testifier chair is Lamaku L. Mikahala Roy.
Lamaku.
Lamaku Roy. Thank you.
Aloha Commission members. Aloha. Friends of Kona. I am Lamaku Mikahala Roy. My father, Ali'i David Kili'ihele Mauna Roy Jr., led the restoration of Ahu Enahiau, meaning burning altar, the first restored temple in the Hawaiian Islands, in the Pacific, and in the world. I have been named, as time has gone on, as Lamaku by my ancestors. In 2010, we began receiving messages from the ancestors of Uiwi. Ahu Enahiau has been the pivotal, key, honored location of the earth. This temple is not only Kamehameha's personal temple, it became the capital site of the Kingdom of Hawaii. Why this area, this project area, is the place called Pu'u. Pu'u is the sacredness focused and identified as the heart of Kalua Okalani. Kalua Okalani means the second heaven. Ponder this name, the second heaven. While Pu'u is identified as the heart of Kalua Okalani, the mountain to shoreline trails of the North Kona coastline hold the true history of the heart of Kalua Okalani. Many testifiers have spoken of this element very importantly. The very fact that this is named Kalua Okalani, this is the name before we became Hawaiʻi. Lamaku, I am the first Lamaku of the modern era. Every number of hundreds of or thousands of years was named one Lamaku. I am the first Lamaku of the modern era. Please, you remember this day. It is as unique as the next breath of air you take and I take. It is unique. This day you are meeting me, one who has been chosen by Akua as Lamaku, and you are being schooled like I have been schooled from Akua by spirit of who I am and what this dedicational effort and sublime responsibility holds, not only for Hawaii, but for the earth.
30 seconds.
Where Iolani is the word that says the heavenly hawk. This is why you find Iolani on the lands at Pu'u, because this is the home of Akua. This is the second heaven. And this is why these lands have been named by the ancestors. A moratorium is being called for from Kaloko in the north to Hononau in the south.
3 minutes.
Akua has given this order, and I mean to uphold it. These lands are to be, there's a moratorium called on them for the fact that these are important to the creation of earth. You see, Akua identifies as this place, as the birth of the earth. This is why Makahiki means at the advent. At the advent of what? The advent of life. Over time, it became used as the word for year.
3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Every
I'll
year
stop
they
counting
would
from
honor
now
the
on.
beginning of life. And soon every birthday honored the beginning of not only the birth of a little boy or a little girl, it honored the birth of the life of the planet as we know it, mankind knows it. This is the heart of the lands that you are talking about and making a judgment about. So commissioners, I remind you, this is a very, very important, perhaps one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. Make it very clear that you remember my testimony, because this you will never hear again in this time. In the future, there will be more Lamaku, but for now, I am covering the ground so that there's no mistake that you understand what you're hearing from me and what these lands are about. Before papers came, we had no human being is born with a pad and a paper when we enter the world. We are all brothers and sisters because we come by the breath of God, and we inherit this precious breath. And it's oral. We all do our keeping the same way, but many have forgotten, and many, especially people who call to make money from their outcomes, they call for the proof of what is on a document. But let us remember, God doesn't miss a thing. And this is for the benefit of the whole earth. So do make your decisions very, very seriously and comprehensively. Choose to not okay this and any other development. I've taken this up with Governor Green, the mayor, just to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Lamaku.
That is everybody that we have signed up to testify for this item.
Could I check a couple of names I have on the attendance list?
Absolutely.
Is there a Jojo Tanimoto that's going to testify today? Maybe by Zoom?
If she did not register or if she did not sign in this morning.
Okay, thank you.
So if they have any questions of any of us, I should remind them that they can ask, please. Don't forget.
Thank you, Lamaku. And I'm just looking for Michael Matsukawa's. Oh, sorry. Hi, Mr. Matsukawa. I'm just checking off names here. Okay, I have everybody off on my list. Is there anybody else that's in the room or outside that would like to testify on item number 2?
This is Jackson Bauer. I've signed up. I'm with the Nalele Chon Access Program. I'm not here for any direct testimony, but like previous meetings, I'm here for any questions the commissioners may have.
Jackson, can you clarify, are you with the state Na'alehele agency or the county?
There is no county Nalehele agency. Yeah, so I'm with the state DLNR Nalehele Chon Access Program for Hawaii Island.
Okay, thank you. I think it was a local island group also called Na'alehele, and I was confused maybe about that. Okay, so we are on item number 2. This is the discussion of Kona 3 LLC. This is PL-REZ-2022-000033. Application to amend change of zone ordinance number 02131 REZ 470 to allow for a 10-year time extension to condition I and condition N. This is PL-CRC-2023-000002. Location Holualoa, Huilans, Holualoa 1, 2, and 3, North Kona, Hawaii. TMKs 37-6-021:016 and 017. We've done the public testimony at this time on this item. I'd like to ask for the applicant or representative, possibly Mr. Arai, to introduce themselves and members of their team, and then to follow to provide their presentation. Mr. Arai.
Thank you very much, Chair Spielman. Thank you, members of the commission. My name is Darren Arai. I'm a planning consultant assisting the applicant Kona 3 LLC regarding their amendment request before the Leeward Planning Commission and the Cultural Resources Commission. I need to first preface our presentation by saying I haven't been well and I'm recovering, but please bear with me if I do tend to cough throughout my presentation. I'll do my best to not cough and let things get in the way. But that being said, joining me today online are the 3 representatives of Kona 3 LLC, consisting of Richard Wheelock, Robert Williams, and Roland Higashi. Also joining us today is Michael Matsukawa, who's legal counsel for Kona 3 LLC, Glenn Escott, consulting archaeologist, and Keone Kalave, who will be assisting us with his presentation on Holua slides. We hope today that we can receive recommendations from the Cultural Resource Commission speaking directly to a number of items. Which would include number 1, efforts of Kona 3 LLC to comprehensively assess historic and cultural resources within the project site, covering years worth of work through various public processes, which include the preparation of an environmental assessment, the issuance of a finding of no significant impact by the planning department in accepting the environmental assessment, a preparation of a cultural impact analysis report that was included as part of the environmental assessment and made a part of the record before both the Leeward Planning Commission and the Cultural Resources Commission. Number 2, actions by the State Historic Preservation Division to review and accept the archaeological inventory surveys that were performed on the project site. Number 3, actions by the planning department in assessing the cultural impact assessment. the botanical surveys, the archaeological surveys, and all the other studies in supporting the issuance of a finding of no significant impact, and the issuance of a favorable recommendation on the applicant's proposed amendment request before the Leeward Planning Commission. And finally, number 4, the thousands of pages of documentations regarding historic land tenure of the project site and immediately surrounding lands that were provided to the Cultural Resource Commission, along with additional assessments and studies that were prepared by the applicant as a part of these proceedings. Now, sorry. The proceedings with before the Leeward Planning Commission and the CRC raised questions regarding the existence of government roads or ways through the Royal Vistas project site, and the applicant prepared a summary of its findings in 2 particular documents. One of them is a memorandum on roads and ways running through and over the Royal Vista project site dated February 7 by Michael Matsukawa, who's available to speak on it if desired. And another letter prepared dated February 28, 2023, prepared by Richard Wheelock, addressed to Jackson Bauer of Na'alahele. Regarding questions regarding Malkamakai access easements and its effect upon the project site, Mr. Glenn and Susan Escott prepared an archaeological inspection summary of the historic Holualoa Hui access easements dated April 2023. And again, Mr. Escott is available to speak on that particular document as well. And finally, in existence of a holua within the Royal Vista project site, we have today Mr. Keone Kalave, who will be making a presentation on that particular matter. So in summary, we want to express that in order to request more time to complete this last phase of a residential project that has been programmed for almost 40 years, the applicant themselves have undertaken 7 years of studies and reviews by government agencies and the general public. The preparation of archaeological reports that were accepted by State Historic Preservation Division, the issuance of a finding of no significant impact by the Planning Department after a 3-year environmental review process. As I mentioned earlier, the submittal of to the CRC of over 2,000 pages of documents regarding their archival research regarding land tenure within the project site and surrounding area. Preparation of additional studies, 2 of which will be spoken to today, right after I conclude my presentation. So we believe that, excuse me, we believe that Kona 3 LLC has been responsible in its efforts to adhere to the historic and cultural resource obligations and follow the processes of both SHPD, the Leeward Planning Commission, the Planning Department, and now in proceedings before the Cultural Resource Commission. We hope that the commissioners will find the applicant has been forthright in its efforts to provide the commission with as much information as it can procure to allow you to make your most informed decision. And if the commission decides that has not been the case, then we ask for the courtesy of specific findings and recommendations that will help guide the applicant toward addressing such deficiencies. So with that said, we do have 2 particular presentations. The first being a presentation by Mr. Keone Kalave regarding the construction of Holua slides, and a second presentation by Glenn Escott regarding his archaeological inspection summary of the Holualoa Hui access easements. So I'll defer to the chair on which presentation you would like to proceed with first. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Arai. You mentioned Mr. Kalave's name first. If that's okay, we'd like to call on him to proceed with the presentation.
That'll be fine. And we may need the assistance of your staff in bringing up the PowerPoint presentation. And then Mr. Kalavi can let you know when to change the slides.
Thank you. Is that okay, staff?
Yes, it is. I anticipated that. Just need to share my screen and make sure it's the right one and all that good stuff, which I'm doing right now. Does everybody see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and if you would just give me a cue, say next slide, and I'll do that.
Okay, aloha, commissioners. So my presentation is on holo slide construction, and it's about a site visit that I did probably was last month. Next slide. Okay, so this is the proposed site of development, and I also, walked on the Mauka side north, and I looked at the two alleged so-called holua slide. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is a brief summary of myself and also what I did on holua since 1996. So I've been doing a lot of work on holua slide or kahua holua or the papa holua or the sled itself. Next slide. Okay, so what I'm going to cover is the basic components of a kahua holua or a slide. On the very top of the slide, you'll find burials of people who actually got killed riding on the kahua holua. The next would be the running path. The running path is where the individual would actually run with his sled and approach the slide and go over the slide all the way to the bottom. Okay, and number 3 is the slide and its construction. Next slide. Okay, so this is an example of the Kapua slide located in Ocean View in Kapua Bay. As you can see, it is roughly paved, and you had pohako outline of the kahua holua, and virtually 90% of the holua slide, it actually enters the ocean or a bay. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is an overview shot of a complete kahua holua or holua slide. As you can see, the upper portion is the running path where the individual would actually run. And as he or she approached the holua slide, he would leap onto the slide itself. And how you determine the end of the running path and the start of the slide is on the photo on the right-hand side. The holua slide is approximately anywhere between 12 to 18 inches higher than the running path. And as you can see on the bottom, that is actually the ending of the holua slide or the kahua holua. Okay, next slide. This is another slide, Kaneaka, and it's in Keoho. The former slide previously there was Pine, and Pine, that slide was built for Lonoika Makahiki, whereas Kaneaka, it was built for Kamehameha III. And this is by far the longest slide in existence. It was approximately a mile long. And you can like all the different slides that I've worked on, you have the minimum components of the running path and also the holua slide that goes from the top all the way down into a specific bay. And I would say probably about 80%, you'll find burials on the top, on the very top of the holua slide itself. Okay, next slide. This is another view of the Kaneaka holua slide. As you can see, it's roughly paved, and you have a short wall on the north side. Approximately all Holua slides, you have walls constructed only on the north side of the slide and not both sides. Okay, next slide. This is an example of a running path. So this is the running path where the individual would actually run on this path, and he or she would approach the beginning of the Holua slide and actually leap onto the slide itself. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is the several photos that I took when I had a site visit on the proposed development property. And as you can see, there's no pavement within this so-called trail. And another thing is obvious is you have walls, probably about 1 meter high on both sides. So in conclusion, these trails are not Holua slides, but rather to actually move cattle or other animals from Mauka to Makai. And that is my conclusion on this particular trails. And if anyone have any questions, free to ask.
I do.
Just ask. If not,
Mr. Kalabi, we might come back to you with questions if that's okay. I think we'd like to hear from, was it Mr. Wheelock that was, oh, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Escott was going to give an overview of the AIS summary.
That's correct.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Kalabi.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. A couple of things. So, people have some thoughts on the level of archaeology that's been done here. And the main thing is there's nothing being hidden. All of this is follow the process. There have been 2 previous studies on the property by Hal Hammett from Cultural Surveys Hawaii. Those were done in the 90s. After that, I think when I came in, I was asked to do the 5-acre parcel first. So we did that. So that was about I think 140 person hours of work that we did. We submitted that to the State Historic Preservation Division, so SHPD, and they reviewed it. So we follow all the rules and regulations. Whatever is out there, that's what's there. I don't have a horse in this race. To me, it's about integrity and finding what's out there, accurately reporting it. But following that, we did an inspection, which took a couple of weeks to relocate the sites that were in the original AIS done by Hal Hammett and CSH. And then we were asked by SHPD to do a fresh AIS. So we turned in the documentation for assessment for the original sites, what still remained, what condition they were in, whether they were accurately recorded. So after we did that, they requested that we do a new AIS. So we did. We went back out again. We spent about 208 hours in the field, rephotographing, redrawing some of these sites, and we found 3 new sites as well. All of this is public record. It's available in the SHPD library. So to say that anyone is hiding anything or that nothing has been found, I don't think that's an accurate portrayal. The other thing is, there were mention of artifacts on the property. And this is Kona, and when we're talking about artifacts, we're talking about shell midden, so fragments of food remains. There may be fragments of ko'i, basalt adzes. You may find volcanic glass flakes from scraper tools. So there are a lot of things. Also bones from meals that were discarded. So that's anywhere in Kona. That's just how it is. There's background artifacts there. Even in field systems, you do testing, you'll find a small amount or light density scatter of these artifacts. So, this property, to call it out as really important for artifacts, it's no more or less significant than any other property in Kona. And there are other properties that have a far higher density of archaeological sites out there. So I just kind of wanted to start with that. And the other thing is, as I explained during the site visit, when you're out in the field working, you start to find features and you start to form interpretations of what things are. And there is an emotional element to it, because you do get excited and you know that these things are important. But my process is, and a lot of archaeologists, the process is to pay attention to what are the characteristics. Why am I sensing that this is this type of feature with this function? And then you start to clear it. And as you're clearing a site and features, you start to modify your interpretation a little bit. You start to see new elements. And sometimes it's just almost subconscious, or something draws your eye over the course of a couple of days, and you find another characteristic which helps you. And then finally, we'll go out and actually excavate. And that's usually what really helps us, because that tells us exactly what people were doing there. So we know the function of that. So I'm very cautious when I'm first in the field. I don't see something and immediately think, oh, this is definitely this. This is what I see. I know this. I know this. So that's my process. And as we were out there looking, we did see there's a number of walls out there. A lot of them are ranch style walls. Some are boundary walls. Hawaiian walls and historic era walls are very different. Hawaiian walls are usually low mounded. There's an example, the Kua'iwi wall, which runs Malkamakai, and then there are low terrace walls that run across slope between those. So the Kua'iwi wall is basically to say, here's my garden and here's where it ends, and your garden's on the other side. Traditionally, you don't see a lot of kind of dry stacked, really tightly fitted rock walls. That's not to say that Hawaiians didn't do that, because they did. There are heiau sites that are really well constructed. But in terms of long linear boundary walls, usually the historic era walls, the ones that we're looking at there, are really well made. So, when we were out there looking at the two walls in question, that originally some folks thought, oh, that's definitely, it has to be a Holua slide. So there's everything we do in the field, but there's also the research we do. So we look at all the land use, we look at the land commission awards, and that's what really did it for us. I don't know if you can share my screen, and I can.
Yeah, I do have they're ready. I do have, if you want.
Can you guys see that yet, or?
Oh,
here, let me share screen.
yeah, you better try.
Okay. So I just wanted to start with this. Let's see, which is the original. Let's see. Can everyone see that?
Yes, sir.
This is the original meets and bounds description that was done by done for John Moon, and it was done by Jay Fuller. So basically what happens is you have to have a surveyor do a meets and bounds survey for your LCA award. And this is the meets and bounds survey that was done, and it's dated 1853 down here at the bottom. And so basically they're out there with chains, and they pull the chains, they get a compass bearing, and that's how they survey the property. And then after that, can everybody see this right here? This is the USGS map with this long LCA.
Sorry to jump in.
This
Scott.
is the area that John G. Moon applied for the LCA. Originally, the LCA property was given by Governor Kuakini. Governor Kuakini gave it to Francis Davis.
Mr. Escott, if you can stop talking for a second.
Francis Davis, I think he committed adultery. And
Ben, can you stop?
Kuakini said, okay, look, we're going to take this away from you, Mr. Davis. We're going to give it to your wife and her sister. And her sister happened to be married to John G. Moon. So John G. Moon put up the money and purchased the LCA. So this is
Mr. Escott.
land that Governor Kukini inherited from his father. And it's actually an Ely, so the Ely of Ka'ohia. And so Mr. Fuller goes out there, the surveyor, and he has people with him who are familiar with the boundary of this Ely and the property. And at the same time, he goes around with them and he surveys it. And in the actual, let me see if I have that. In the actual testimony, it says it's fenced. And usually a fence, the Old English word fence also means a wall. So you can have a rock fence or fence. The property already had a rock wall on it. So for this really long, hang on a second, please. Hello. For this really long LCA, let's go to the next one. Let's see.
Glenn, can you hear us at all? Mr. Escott? Mic check.
Okay, so here it is again.
We can't see it.
Okay, so when the county overlaid this on their TMK maps, there's a problem right up in here.
Maybe
I spent about a day and a half trying to overlay
Let
the
him-
original LCA. Oh, hang on a second, please.
Technical difficulties.
Am I not, can you guys not hear me?
No.
Correct. Can you hear us?
Oh, okay, you can't hear me or?
We can hear you, but
Oh, okay, hang on a second. Let me see, for some reason, I'm not getting any sound. Let me see if I can fix that.
Kevin, I'll let you run point on this communication.
Thank you. Glenn, let me know when you can hear me.
I'm not sure why.
You could check your. Let me know when you can hear my voice, Glenn.
Okay, let me see if I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Now, yep, okay.
Glenn? Okay, great. So, when you went to change from the meets and bounds to the USGS is basically when we lost you because that slide didn't move over.
Okay. Okay, so it's a long linear LCA. And so what happens is, you know, they're pulling chains, I think they're 80 links in a chain through the woods, and they take their compass bearing. So for the most part, this LCA, it overlays onto the county TMK maps and the USGS fairly well. But there is one place where you can get the lower section, to line up perfectly, or you can get the upper section to line up perfectly. The place where there is a problem is right in here.
Okay,
And you
so
can
Glenn,
see, yes.
Glenn, sorry. So, like I said, that slide is not changing over. Your screen is still shared. And we're
Oh,
looking-
I see.
But it's
Let me try a new share. Here we go.
still
How's
showing
that?
53.
Let's see. Yeah, it's a little new to me. I apologize. Can you see
Okay.
this?
Terrific. Yes.
Okay, so now I know how to share from slide to slide. Okay.
Rock and roll. Thank you.
So, okay, thank you. So you can see there's a problem right at the top of the property. And, you know, the county, when they overlaid it, they realized, okay, it doesn't match exactly. So this is what they did. You can see where these walls are. You can see where the county has this Land Commission Award 3360. Okay, let me switch and share another. Oh, I have to do this first. Hang on one sec. Okay. Let's see. All right, not that one. Hang on one sec. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
I'm gonna new share. Okay. So this is the original map based on the meets and bounds description with the project overlaid on it. So what I did was I took this, overlaid the project, I converted the chains in the description to feet. So 1.82 feet, you see on the lower left-hand side, that's the Mackay side where it meets the ocean. it was 1.82 chains, which is about 120 feet. I did the same thing up above just to check it. Here it is right here. You can see it very clearly. This is about 40 feet right here. And it's the narrowest part of this LCA, which we know had a rock wall surrounding it. It matches the boundaries exactly. I think the up at that end, if you take a tape measure and pull it, it's about 30, somewhere around 30 feet, not 40, because the wall is within the boundary of it. So that's how we knew what these walls were. Also, as this wall comes down, it actually crosses over a gulch, or kind of a wash, and then there's a gulch. So it doesn't really make sense. So there's a number of reasons which Keone pointed out. There's no paving between the walls, and the walls themselves, there's walls on both sides. They look to be historic era dry stack rock walls, and they match the boundaries. And I understand, you see an aerial photograph, or you go out there and see it the first time, and you think to yourself, we've discovered a Holua slide. This is it. But there's a lot more that goes into it. And so this is the background research that we had, so we knew what we were looking at. Okay, I'm gonna just go to. All right, just this last slide here.
We see a Google Earth aerial.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay. So up here, you can see the walls. And basically, when we did the AIS study, along the north, where my pointer is, you can kind of see an outline. And it's not really a rock wall. What it is and every so often you'll see a footing stone. And we followed it out. And also, okay, so the wall was there, it was removed, but some of the footing stones are still there, and there's deposition along it. So there's the grass grows higher on it. The cattle don't walk over it. So that's how we knew, okay, so the map is slightly off. So the TMK map showing the LCA is a little off, and the actual location of it is just a little different. I'll go back. All right. So you can see this, right?
Yes, we see TMK LCA walls.
Yeah. So that's it. So this dash line, there are a couple of wall segments and then footing stones along the dash line. So it's just that the county map doesn't match up exactly where the walls are on the ground surface. So that's okay. We get that now. And after the LCA was sold and cattle ranches were out there, it's clear by looking at this southern wall, they actually took some of this rock and they've been repairing these walls because they used them. But of course, here's where the gulch comes right across it. So if this were a Holua, it would run right into this and then into this kind of deep gulch over here. So another thing I'd just like to address really quickly is, yes, there were trails everywhere. And John Moon has this property, and the property goes from the ocean all the way up above the upper road, above Holua Village. And he's using this property. So he's a herdsman. Francis Davis was a herdsman. And the area is walled, so they got to walk somewhere. They've got houses up above. I'm not sure they had a house on the coast, but they're moving back and forth. That doesn't make it a public road. If you live in an Ahupua'a and you have your gardens and you have use of an ely, you can walk up and down through there. And if you have family members and friends, they can too. You don't just kind of move around on other people's property. So all I'm saying is, even though there may or may not be trails, and they had to, John Moon and his family and whoever else used it afterwards had to move up through this long, thin, narrow area. So those are the main points of that. But it also means that there's not a public trail here. There's not a Holua slide here. Unless you're willing to believe that Governor Kukini, who knew this property, wanted to give a property with a Holua slide on it to John Moon. So that's this portion of the property here. So that's the main point. of this. And then, of course, someone said, well, they did studies, but they were only on the eastern part, the Malka part. We did the trail studies at the request of the Planning Commission. So the AISs have already been done. The AIS has been approved, and there's a process. I mean, we go out and do an AIS, we try our best to find all the features. Sometimes there are features that are subsurface, they're not marked on the surface. And there's a process for that. So even though you have your AIS has been approved, you have your preservation plan, then you also need an archaeological monitoring plan. So all of this is reviewed and approved by State Historic Preservation Division. The archaeological monitoring plan means when actual work starts, there has to be a monitor out there. And that's how you find the features that may have been missed during the original study. Most of the primary features are always found, but I've worked on a lot of projects where we went back into data recovery or we did additional studies and we find something else. It happens, but there's a process for that. And so recently, State Historic Preservation Division has asked for new AISs if they were done back in, 15 years ago or whatever. And then also the monitoring program, which allows us to stop work in that area and record the data. And if it's significant, we bring it to the State Historic Preservation Division and ask them whether or not we need to preserve something. So as an archaeologist, I make a recommendation, but it's a recommendation through consultation with the state. State has the final say. If they don't like our recommendation, they can ask for something else and we have to give it to them. We do it. That's how it is. So yeah, so those are the important things for this property. Let me see if I can share something else as well. We'll move on a little bit. Because I want to address, which one is it? Okay. Okay. New share. I think it's this one. Okay, so this is the 1928 strip map, portion of strip map. So here's a trail that comes down through here. And it's not, it actually starts kind of above the Moon property, drifts off of the Moon property, back across. So if this was done, if this trail existed prior to or while John G. Moon had this property, and it has a rock wall around it, it wouldn't drift like this. This is a later trail. Unfortunately for this area of Kailua Kona, there are no early historic maps that show pre-contact trails. But based on the fact that it ends at the railroad berm, it does go down to the ocean and it doesn't travel right down the middle of the Moon property. It suggests that this trail existed after the Moon property had already been sold and it was being used for other purposes. It was a larger piece of land. Then also down below here, where you see where a 5-acre parcel is, where we did the study, there's a trail that comes down here. Again, it ends here. So when we did the original look at it, it doesn't match exactly where there is a double wall site. So we did record it. We recorded it as ranch walls, which they are. And there's a section of it that still exists. I mean, yeah, this property has been used for cattle for so long, and cattle ranchers, they do a lot of clearing. So this property, compared to some other properties, both north, south, and also Mackay, this property doesn't have as many remaining features. It probably had more prior to cattle ranching, but so there is a possibility that this trail continued down at least to about here. And then once they closed off that section, the ranch road goes north of that. So they stopped using that portion of it. And all of this information and kind of the results of the previous CRC meetings that we've had, I've been consulting with Susan Lebo, who is she's the head of the archaeology, SHPE archaeology program, and also Nicole Mello and Sean Nalemale, who are both Hawaii Island archaeologists. So they're aware of all of the information we're providing you. We've spoken to them. So we're continuing to consult with them. At this point, the AIS has been accepted. We can submit additional information, and we can look for their recommendations as well. And the other thing I'd like to kind of address really quickly is, these are all the trails. The project area is down on the lower left-hand side here. Can you guys see that? Yeah, this is a TMK map, which shows and these are the Hululoa Hui access easements that were created by the Hui on Hui land. Okay, so these easements exist, but they are now under people's property. This way 8 right here, this is the Kealakova'a trail. And we know this not because of what anyone else has done for research, but Mr. Wheelock spent about 6 weeks going to the state offices on Oahu. He pulled up all the old LCAs. He found references in the LCAs and land grant documentation, hand-drawn maps, and descriptions of the Kealakova'a trail. So we know this thing, which comes down here, which goes through the development. This is the other, let me go all the way down. These are, okay, so this is the trail. And we also have Henry Kekahuna, who mapped Kealakova'a Heiau in the 30s. He has a description that says Kealakova'a trail comes out like 100 feet or so south of Kealakova'a Heiau. So we know there's this trail here. So it follows along this land grant. It's mentioned in some of the land grants. This is the original documentation referencing the Kealakova'a trail. So you can see it says Kealakova'a. Same, and in this case, it's called Road to the Sea. So it was called both. I just want to bring it down and show you. This is a plat map. The property that Kona 3 has is up here. This trail comes down here, and this was an archaeological, it shows some archaeological sites on it as well. And here's Kealakova'a Heiau. So this is where it runs. So the question is, we know the trails above the project area were creations of the Hululoa Hui. They may have followed some older trails, but the Hui was able to make those easements because they owned the land. The project area land, the Hui no longer wanted it. They wanted to sell that because it wasn't very productive. And so that's what they did. But anyway, yeah, that's the main thing. Those are the main points I'd like to just point out to folks. So I'm going to see if I can stop sharing if anyone has questions or.
We do.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I'm not exactly sure our next course staff, if you could help me, should we ask for questions of Mr. Kalave and Mr. Escott now from commissioners? Should we do that and then move into discussion?
I'm sorry, Chair Spielman, I was unable to hear what you just asked. Could you repeat that?
Sure thing. What's the best course of action to move forward? Should we open for questions to Mr. Kalave and Mr. Escott, or should we move into discussion? And maybe you can remind me, is discussion for all parties or just commissioners?
So, well, I see Darren has his hand up. So Darren, what were you wanting to add?
Sorry for interjecting, but I just wanted to note that, we do have Michael Matsukawa Richard Wheelock, in addition to Mr. Kalave and Mr. Escott. So I would encourage the commissioners to ask any of these learned gentlemen any questions, because we feel this is just an opportunity in providing as much information as possible to the commission. So I encourage all of you to ask questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chair Spielman, what I was going to recommend is similar, is that at this point, the commission maintain this communication with the applicant and their team regarding this proposal as we move towards a motion or recommendation. I do want to say that, of course, some of the public testifiers still have some questions that they would actually like to ask of some of the experts. That's something for yourself and Corp Counsel to consider. And while that's being considered and you guys have discussion with the applicant's experts, I will work with Kim to potentially to write down some of those specific questions so that we can move forward efficiently if you guys deem that appropriate.
Sinclair, how does Corp Counsel feel about public testifiers asking questions of the representation for Kona 3?
I would say that's not typical. That's not a typical procedure. So the commission is still in the fact finding. So the commission members can ask questions. That's fine, to gather facts. And then at some point, some commission member is going to have to make a motion for action and then discussion on that. So
I just did. If you want to write them down, that would be a great help.
Please let him know.
I have a procedural question if I can ask you.
So that's right now, the testifiers aren't board members. They've already been given their opportunity to provide their testimony. So now it's for the board to conduct their business. And so if the board members have any questions from the persons that Mr. Arai pointed out, they can ask them now, or they can continue to get more information and ask them all at one time. It's up to you, Chair, how you want to do that.
Well, I think thank you, Sinclair. I think I'd like to open it up to the commissioners, and if anybody has any questions, I have a couple jotted down, but maybe we'll cover more territory. I'll open it up.
Ma'am, I did.
I see Mr. Scott Mahoney raising his hand. Scott, if you'd like to go ahead and ask a question.
Yeah, I want to ask Mr. Kalabi, is there like a standard width of these Holuo slides? You know, I know they're all different, but is there like a basic width of them?
They're trying to conduct business without input from the people who come to talk to them. That is not right.
Hamakua is technically a party here. She's not a normal public. And the law recognizes cultural representatives. We've asked them counsel for a ruling on that. It's an objection.
Thank you. I'm giving them an opportunity to talk to this expert.
Can we ask for a ruling on that from them?
Sorry, just weighing in here. I think we can ask questions of the public. Is that right?
If the board, yeah, I mean, that's fine. When the people testify, they give their testimony, and then the board members can ask questions at that time. That time has already passed. Now is the time for the board members to ask questions of the presenters. If the chair, if you think there's a question that you want to ask of a testifier,
then you won't. If you don't give, there is no take. Please relax. Let this flow. Let them conduct their business and be patient, please, and do not interrupt. It is not conducive to this moving forward, and it needs to. Due process needs to continue. You need to please have a seat if you wish to stay present.
We're here.
You please. I know you are. We all are. We all breathe, listen, and hear.
Yep.
But I'm asking you to help me maintain order, Lamaku. Please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Really asking that we get a question raised that's procedural to the board. She is technically a party. She is recognized under the state laws as a party because of her cultural heritage and cultural practitioner. And we would like to know if the board would rule on whether she's allowed to be a party. You've given thousands of hours of testimony to these developers in 3 minutes to a cultural representative.
Thank
I
you.
understand.
My father was chair of the Kamora Point Commission. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe I call on Sinclair again at Corp Council to give us an opinion. I have no
Yeah,
standing.
Chair, my opinion is to continue the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Go back to Mr. Scott Mahoney.
Yeah, I had a question for Mrs. Kalabi on is there like a standard width of these photo slides?
No, it actually is based on the length. Because if you look at Kaneaka, at some width, it's 40 feet. And versus if you look at the Keahu'olu slide, it's only 11 feet in width. So it varies on actually the length of the slide itself. Yeah, you can find short slides and then also versus really long slides, like like the Kaneaka one, down South Kona, you have really long slides, and other places it's probably about maybe 600 to maybe 800 feet long.
Yeah, my question was because just looking at the what they claim to be a hollow slide, which you sort of like disputed that, but how the thing started at 40 feet and ended up at 120 feet. They mostly the parallel slide is mostly uniform, right? Or does it just does it get narrower and wider as it goes down?
It actually it gets actually wider, a little bit wider, but not really wide. But there's obstacles that are actually built into the slide itself. Like you would find like a finger of lava where you have to maneuver around the finger and not go over the finger of lava and stuff like that. But basically on all Holua slides on the west side, you're gonna find pavement because of lack of lepo or dirt. Whereas if you look at slides in Hamakua, Kohala, and also Hilo, it was built on grassy hills. So you'll never find remnants of a Holua slide because they just rode on grassy hills versus if you look at Kona and Puna, because we have vast pohaku. So it resembles like ski slides. Yeah, when you look at them, yeah. So you have actually ruins, yeah. And so if you look at the one that I had on the PowerPoint in South Kona, that slide there is 99.9% intact. We ride that slide. We rode that slide since the mid 90s. So we bring in like tea leaves and we lay all the tea leaves on and we ride it, So I bring my students out there and, just to experience riding a koho holua or a holua slide. Yeah.
Mahalo. Thank you.
All right.
Would any other commissioners like to ask questions of the presenting team?
I have a couple questions. I think it's for Mr. Escott. You had one of the slides that had the strip map trail, I think, that was overlaid on the project area, and you had said a comment that it was a historic trail because it curved, or did I hear that right? Could you repeat that?
Yeah. Okay. So if the trail existed across all the way up and down Makamakai, across the ili of Ka'ohia, then it wouldn't cross into and out of the Moon property. So once the Moon property is walled, the trail either has to be outside of it or inside of it. As long as Mr. Moon is running cattle on there and he has the walls, he's going to maintain them. So the public or whatever that trail was used for it would go either outside of his property or would go right down the middle of his property, right? But since the trail, and a lot of the trails, even the way the USGS makes maps a lot of times, most of them, is to use an aerial photograph. So if you've got an aerial photograph and you can see something that looks like a dirt road or a trail, then they have a stereoscope, they have two similar images, and they draw up the topography and the features on the ground surface. So somebody was using that, but after the Muns no longer own that property. And it may be as easy as people from the Hululua Hui who are above the railroad berm moving down to it, or people going up to the railroad area when there was still a railroad. And people we talked to said that there were a couple of depots or places near the property where they could get on and off the train. So, we're looking at it more like, it's not associated specifically with the Mun property or that particular Ely, and it's probably a later use. Obviously it is, especially if there are aerial photos from the 50s that show it. And it's quite possible people running cattle or they're going up to use the railroad. So that's just the thinkings, it's not a definitive. It doesn't say yes or no, but we have to use all the information we have to come to a logical conclusion, understand what this is. And so does that make sense?
Yes, and your interpretation of the Mun walls were that they're historic in nature.
Yeah.
And they're
Well, they match the shape and dimensions of the Land Commission Award perfectly. And the description of the Land Commission Award says that, the boundaries of the LCA were fenced. And we know from Old English fenced means people don't, people don't usually make wood fences, but fences also use a rock wall, or they call it a rock fence. Otherwise, later in history, of course, you've got barbed wire, and then that's barbed wire fencing. So it matches the boundaries of the original meets and bounds description and the map that was made for the Land Commission Award that was submitted and accepted for the purchase of the land as the Land Commission. Yeah.
Thank you. And one more question. For the cultural impact assessment, you guys did one interview with Greg Kushima, but you did contact other folks. I think
we did.
3 other people said they had knowledge of the area, one of them being Commissioner Louis.
Yes.
And I was just wondering what they shared, since it wasn't.
Okay, so especially Nicole, she knows a lot of the history of the area. So if people have knowledge, we want to, we contact somebody. First, we want to let you know they're not familiar with the project area, or they are. They're familiar with the history of it. The main question we were interested in is, are they aware of any past or ongoing cultural practices? So people can be familiar with the project area, but not know of any specific past or ongoing cultural practices. And that's not uncommon, and it's unfortunate because guaranteed they were cultural practices all throughout the Kailua area and Kona. And it's just that once land becomes private property, they no longer have access to that property. They have to go to other places, and the cultural practices are no longer practiced, so they don't get handed down. So, any cultural impact assessment, we can't say there were never cultural practices on that property because it's probably wrong. But we can't document any past or ongoing. If they're past practices which are not likely to be renewed, then generally the finding is no effect. There's no effect to cultural practices. And I've had conversations with different groups, and it'd be great to see, and Kamehameha Schools is doing this. There are institutions that are kind of revitalizing some of these old garden areas and using them for education. And not enough, in my opinion, but I wish that's what needs to happen, honestly. People need to be able to do that. And in the places where the features still exist, where there's intact field system. Yeah.
So was there information that they shared pertinent to the site at all that you can share with us?
No, pertinent to the site.
To the project area.
Yeah, I think Nicole provided, she always does, she provided some of the background historical information. I don't remember specifically what it was, but she usually, I'll give her my draft and she'll say, hey, you really need to put this in here because it's really important. So I could go back and look for specifics and emails and stuff, but
Thank you.
I have Nicole raising her hand. If we'd like to call on Commissioner Nicole Louie to ask a question.
Aloha, thanks Natalie for, actually, Glenn, I don't think I ever commented, due to work or I was busy, I think, and I really never got back to you. And I'm sorry about that, but, so my ohana, the Pelicanes, and
hang on.
the Laioha family, all intertwined with the Pelicanes and Akamu, and they were all part of the Hololoa Halehalawai Hololoa Church and the building of that church, and Joseph Akamu being the deacon of that church for about 50 years. But they all lived where the stone church is. That's where our family property was, to the north of that. I used to have the windmill, and that's where my Tutu Kapahu Pelikane and his wife Kalei Kaika lived, and had like about 12, 13 children. Anyway, Auntie Hattie Ahuna, in talking story with her, she talked about a trail that was, so the property that my tutu them live is like right in line, almost in line with the Likai subdivision, Royal Point Siena Trail, Royal Point Siena Road. It went up to up by Kupuna and then up to Laco. That's the access exit point from getting out of here. So anyway, she used to say that she used to be in charge of drying the fish, and used to dry the fish on the coconut leaf. Never have flies those days. And they put all the fish on the coconut leaf, and they dry the fish, and then they would pack the fish on the donkey, on the kake, and he would take the trail up to Hololoa from this point. So I don't know if it's through the MUN property or what, but I know there were trails going Malcolm Mackay, because she said that. And she said they used to take the donkey would go on his own, go up to Hololoa, and go to this Japanese person's house. She didn't tell me the name of the Japanese person, but, and then he would put the sake on the donkey. And I'm not proud of this, because Hema Kupuna working hard, catching all these fish, and then they give all the fish to Apmauka for sake, you know, because they like the alcohol. And they would sit down, and my grandma tell they would sit down and play ukulele, play guitar, and drink. And so in some way, sometimes, you know, the Hawaiians had why they go to the drink and not take care of their family, I don't understand. But you know, all this gets lost, and then they lose their land because one part of the family was giving their land to the Japanese coffee farmer for $1 a year. You know, why are they doing that? I don't understand that, but of course I know they didn't know the value of money. And all they knew was they worked for the Konohiki, they worked for the ali'i, and all the resources go to the ali'i, and then the ali'i share that with, and everybody share their resources among themselves. So it was sad to hear that story. So I didn't want to share that story, but I'm sharing it in front of all of you right now. And so there was trails going up Makamakai. I don't doubt that. And my kupuna did trade for sake and swipe. And on the other side of my ohana, Loe, was married to the High Chief Kaiyama, she was the sole owner of Hololoa. So, and a lot of my own people didn't come forward and ask us about our connections to Lo'e and Kinimaka, she being Kinimaka's brother. And they never got us involved with Keolo Nahihi. They never came talk to my mama and my papa. So, sometimes I get grudge against my own people because, come talk to us and ask us what we feel. So I keep those things secret because why should I go tell them when they're not going to believe us or talk to us? So, Natalie, thank you for bringing up that question because now I have a chance to share in front of everybody. I'm not hiding nothing. And if I had my way, I wouldn't let this project go through. I had my way, I wouldn't let this project go through. So much has been taken from our people, and it saddens me. And our own people fight each other too, and that saddens me too, in the case of Lo'e, and then all the talk with Keolo Nahihi and all that, and nobody came to us, and asked us to be part of that group. So I'm just sharing that, and Tutu Lo'e, her husband had land in Kapala Alaya as well. So I'm doing descendancy claim for all that too, but that's for burials. That's a different issue. But the other question I had for you, Glenn, was why weren't we taken to the lower portion of this property and shown the burial? And where I know the river crosses that property. And Aaron brought up a good point. Why were we taken through somebody else's property down a step ladder that was so dangerous? And Mr. Wheelock falls down after we come out and he cut his finger. That's Ho'ailona to the Hawaiians. Yeah. To the Hawaiians, that's Ho'ailona. When something like that happens, that means the person wrong. They're not doing something right. So I'm not getting angry, Mom. So be quiet. I just expressing myself. And so, we saw that as a whole Ilona, and I hope that
okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, if I can answer really quickly. Okay, so we went out and did a site visit for the area where the walls were, which might be a trail there. So the two areas. That all came from the original Leeward Planning Commission meeting. And the suggestion made at the end of the meeting was, I think the CRC should be involved and look specifically at those areas. So in order to look at that area, to come from the Mauka portion above the property, that's the quickest, easiest way to get in there because there's no other way that's really simple. So that's why we went to those specific areas and not other places, because there weren't questions at the Leeward Planning Commission on any of the other archaeology, the reports out there. And that's the only reason, nothing to hide, nothing like that. It's just, the area where the burial was, okay, there's, where there's two burials, right? The one that we consulted with you on. So we went out and looked at that. So we know that area. The other one, of course, was the one that, back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, back when they were doing that thing, they worked with the Burial Council and they reinterred it off project and removed the feature that once covered that burial. So, I mean, I know where that area is and I've been to it several times and I can take you to the area where the burial was. The Eevee are no longer there and some of the Lepo has been removed and was reinterred with where it is now.
I remember that.
I don't specifically know where the reinterment is, but I know it's off project, but not too far away.
Yes, I remember you bringing that up. Yeah. Thank you. The other question I had was, that house platform that we found possibly the working stone. Okay, so how much of it was recorded and data recovered? Was it done extensively, or I had
that was So that was recorded in the 5-acre AIS that we did. So we mapped it all out, have photographs. We did shovel probe tests in that area. And right nearby to that, there's also a historic era hearth. So we know by the shape and the form of it, it's kind of a cowboy rectangular slab stone, small, cook fire hearth. So, but yeah, it has been recorded, that area.
Okay, so is that a substantial house site or?
It looks like kind of tent hab terraces, small areas that they may have been planting around it. But that's, we don't know for sure, but I think there were food item remains, stuff like that we recovered. But we also know there, of course, we know the cattle ranching, but there were a number of sites. There's just a lot of later historic era and modern kind of trash. In fact, there was a small puka, not quite a lava tube, and quite a bunch of rubbish people were just dumping in there, from maybe the 1920s, 30s, 40s, that kind of thing. So I think with the hui being there and the ranching and the railroad bed and people moving along the railroad bed across, north and south, and then there's just a lot of stuff out there that's more modern rubbish, debris. Refuse.
Okay, and one more question. So you know the trail that you folks showed us before we started making our way down, and there was a fence going across of it, the entrance. So is there any sign of that trail continuing into this property?
No, actually, the easement was created, the trail easement was created along the north side of the Mun LCA. And there's an access easement, and oddly, over the years, originally it was an easement. I think now it's no longer even shown as an access easement on the property with it crosses. So technically, I don't think that owner can own that easement, but it actually comes out right at the railroad berm, but not in line with the Mun property walls, the LCA 3660 walls. It would have, and that's why I kind of think it ends right there at the railroad berm, because there's nothing visible on the ground surface that shows a trail. And if you're north of the Mun property, the slope is kind of big there and it's uneven and it goes down towards the coast, but it also goes down towards the gulch, right? So, yeah.
So when you say the Mun property, you're talking about this property owned by K3?
Land Commission Award 3660.
Oh, so it's the same property for K3 then?
They don't own that, no.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's actually Malka of Malka of the free property.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Nicole Louie. Any other commissioners that have any questions? Matthew Clark, I see your hand. It's all yours.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I guess this question is just a general question for folks involved in this project. And looking at the development plan, which was shared at one of these meetings, it shows, there's a lot of open space or park area proposed for this property. Listening to the testimony from the public, a lot of it has been for keeping this open space and creating, easements for trails or access and preserving cultural sites. I know that AIS only commits you to preserving a portion of the railroad, a petroglyph, and a burial site. Have you or would you consider perhaps changing the density or shifting some of the structures to create a larger open space and maybe work with some of the public to create an open area, maybe perhaps that includes some of the trail easements and the archaeological features? If anyone would like to address that, that's my first question.
I'll try my best. Very insightful, Commissioner Clark. I mean, it's something that we have discussed internally, and we're trying to figure out the proper opportunity to bring that forward. But when you really think about it, and it's all about maintaining a proper perspective. The 103 acres that comprises the 215 single-family residential lots in Kona Vistas have all been carved up, all sold in fee, everyone has their chunk of land, right? What's different about this project is you're absolutely correct. It is a multiple family residential project. You will have individual building sites, but with extensive amounts of common areas, I should say. So absolutely, what you see on the conceptual map is a concept map. There definitely can be opportunities to explore, better siting opportunities, especially as it may pertain to protection of certain archaeological features. So I appreciate that comment, very insightful.
Thank you, Darren. Yeah. And I guess for Glenn, I have a question for you. I noticed in the EIS, it shows a lot of the sites had been bulldozed since after they were recorded in the early 90s by CSH. And that's what you found when you were out there. And do you know any particulars about that? Was that done for ranch clearing or as part of the nearby development, or when it occurred?
I don't think it was for development. I think it's primarily done for the ranching, but I mean, there's no evidence to say one way or the other. The original owners, Gamrex, I don't know what they did out there. So I can't really be definitive on that. I don't know who did the actual, but CSH, when they're out there in the 90s, they said, yep, stuff has been bulldozed, but here's what's there. And then we went back out and found that there was additional dozing.
Okay, thank you. And I actually have one question for Mr. Kalave, if he's still on. I'm just curious, why do Holua only have walls on the north side typically? Is something I'm curious about.
It's basically it's more a spiritual element. Yeah, it's like also when you if you look at the Holua or the Kahua Holua or the slide, it goes into into a bay. It goes into the ocean, and either the left or the right hand side, there actually will be a small cave. So they would just actually scope up the place and also select an area. They would never just say, oh, this is a nice location. They're looking for basic components that's also included in the area. Yeah. So if you look at the Kaniaka slide, the width of the Kaniaka slide, the sun actually goes from left to right. It doesn't go out. And the reason why they built the slide is because of that feature and that feature alone. Because like I said earlier, the original slide, Pine, was built for Lono Ikamakahiki. And then afterwards, they built it, larger and longer for Kamehameha III. So every Holua slide or Kahua Holua is built for an ali'i.
Mahalo.
Matt, did you have any other questions for President?
No, that was it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Matt. Any other commissioners that would like to ask a question? I'll open it up. I don't see anybody raising their hand, but please jump in if you do have a question. I'd like to go ahead and ask two questions now. One of them was the exact same question Matt just asked. Thank you for asking that. I think my follow-up to that, Mr. Kalave, is in a Mauka Makai setting where terrain is dropping from Mauka to Makai, and we see maybe a wall on only the north side. How do we retain the haka haka or the pavement to the south? Is it just kind of ramped down to the south, or is it maybe contained by a natural berm or other feature? Any insights? Greatly appreciated.
Yes. So basically, when they built the Kohohulua, they also look at the area. So they would build it alongside, like say, a side of a hill. So one side would be built up where, it's almost like a hill when you build a hill, right? The front feature looks really high, but it's built into a slope. So basically with the Kohohulua, it all depends how steep it is when it's coming down. So sometimes when, like I'll talk with the Kaniaka, there's rolling hills. So when you take off, it's really steep. Then you hit the first rolling hill, it slows you down, you go over, and it picks up speed. So on the Kaniaka slide, I believe there are 6 hills. So because you're gonna slow down. If not, you're gonna be going like 70 miles an hour plus going down. Yeah. So, and In other cases where you don't have hills, what they do is, so they'll build like the walls, you know, going down, and you also have walls in between. So these walls are built at an angle to hold all the material so it doesn't actually slide down. Yeah. So I actually worked portion of Kaniaka, the construction of that slide, and also in North Kohala. There's another slide on KS land, and I believe I worked on that slide in 2001, 2002. Yeah. But that's really good examples of seeing walls that actually built in to the Kohoholo itself. Yeah. So like I say, you have a running path, then you have the slide itself, and it goes into the bay.
Thank you for those insights, Mr. Calabi. It's much appreciated. Mr. Escott, I think maybe I'm a little bit confused, but if you could please bring back up the slide you had with the, it was like a strip map and it had the trail and dashed line. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. See if I can share this again. Here we go. Share this one. So this is the map we're talking about, yeah?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. So my question involves the overlaying of various maps, and I'm going to kind of break this up. It appears that you or your firm drew in the green line and the red line. Is that correct?
Yeah, this red here, this is the 5-acre AIS project area. And the green is the larger, I think it's 76 acres maybe, project area. Now, the dash line, okay, the yellow dash line is the railroad berm, but it just covers the railroad track, which is shown on the map. And then this dash line, same thing, it exists. And then I've just made it bolder so that you can see it.
Okay, so you drew over to make graphics better on those dash lines for the trail. Yeah. Okay, understood. Now, with the, you walked us through some mapping where things were shifted, they didn't quite align, has to do with like modern day conveniences versus old world survey techniques.
Yes.
Could it be that this trail does overlap more and we're just not in evidence of that exactitude with survey techniques?
Okay, so are we talking about the trail that runs down through the Land Commission Award? Or are we talking specifically about the one that runs into the 5-acre parcel, or both?
Only the trail that you have highlighted in black ink running down through the subject parcel area.
Okay, so I didn't overlay. Okay, I didn't overlay this dash line. I just followed the existing, and also they show the LCA. So the only thing I added is this green larger project area and this red. So the map itself, and I could probably find it and pull it up. But yeah, I mean, it's possible that they didn't map it exactly right, but I gotta think it follows it, you know, and I think it matches what you see in some of the older aerial photos where it shows up.
What I'm understanding from your response is that the trail dash line was already indicated in that location on this map.
Correct.
And it's not an overlay. I understand. Thank you. It's just highlighting the graphics. Okay. I was a little confused about that. Now, there being a trail on this 1928 strip map, do we know through the project subject area, do we know when this trail was being used? It looks like it kind of overlaps the MUN LCA slightly.
Yeah, it kind of runs into it, out of it, across it, and then it goes further Mackay. But I mean, I think maybe this might be the earliest one, or maybe there was a 26 map that might show it, but that's the only indication we have. That and an aerial photo that's from a later time that indicates there was a trail there. Or a dirt road. So the dash line is a trail or dirt road.
Okay. And my follow-up question to this is pre-railroad. Is there a chance that the trail running through the subject parcel and the trail terminating at the railroad berm Mauka of the subject parcel were connected by a horizontal lineal element or a diagonal path, or do you often only see trails in vertical alignments?
It all depends. I mean, there are different types of trails and they have different uses.
How about for this one? Let's look at this one.
Yeah, it's impossible to say it did or did not continue, but we don't have any indication that it did continue. And the fact that it runs through the walls of the Mun property indicates that the Mun property was no longer being used, the walls were no longer being maintained, which indicates that the trail is older than the LCA and didn't exist in that configuration prior to the Mun property. So that would kind of suggest that it didn't exist prior to that. The Muns might have walked Malcolm Mackay within their property, and they may have even beaten down a little path to do that or run cattle up and down. But this, I think it has to logically post-date the Mun property. So whenever the Mun property was sold, it was no longer in use, the walls were no longer maintained, and other people were using it. So that's the logical conclusion that comes from, looking at the configuration of the trail, the property, and we think it, we know it only shows it going up to that location, up to the railroad berm.
Thank you. That's my next question. Logically, we were standing there in the field looking at a trail or what appeared to be a cattle trail between narrower walls going Mauka from this site. And is that not Mauka trail off property not indicated on these same time period maps?
It is not. And the other thing is, okay, so that particular trail is actually north of, so it's above the Land Commission Award 3360. So it never passed into the Mun property. And the other thing is that, if you look at the walls, they are definitely, really tightly fitted, well-faced, historic era walls. So that trail, or as an easement, first shows up in the Hawaiʻi partition maps. And it looks like something they may have created, but.
Thank you. Thank you. I do have another question for you, Mr. Escott. I've seen a lot of public testimony. I've read through it all, maybe heard some as well. There seems to be some confusion, and I'd like for your clarity on this. The red polygon shown on this map is a 5-acre site that was an AIS was performed.
Yeah, that's the 5-acre project area outlined. So that was done first because so here's the history. CSH, Cultural Surveys Hawaii, went out and they did everything except for that property, those 5 acres. That was an exclusion area. So they did the whole subdivision, the Royal Vista subdivision, but that was one area that was excluded. The other thing to note is that I think in the GAMREX correspondence, there was some kind of attempt to maybe do something agricultural in the area of the 5 acres and just below it. And you can see in some of the older aerial photographs, the parts of that, especially below the 5 acres, there was some bulldozing in there. You could see the long linear bulldozer push pile kind of thing. We saw them in the field too, but that's why this was done first, because the AIS had already encompassed the 76 acres, the larger portion, but that had not been done. So we did that first. And then when Shipty asked for an additional AIS, the 5 acres had already been approved, the AIS report. So we went back and did the 76 acres.
So to confirm, the original larger portion of the property had an AIS excluding the 5 acres.
That's correct.
When you came on board, you firstly performed the 5 acres and subsequently did the larger portion of the parcel. Is that correct?
Yeah, the original study by CSH goes from the north boundary of this project area that you're looking at in green, comes down to the highway and goes all the way over to Laco Street and a little bit beyond. I mean, it was a really large area that was done, and the 5 acre exclusion area is shown on their map that it was an exclusion area.
And okay, So when your office became involved, you did the 5 acres first,
Correct,
and subsequent to that, you did the green area.
correct.
Okay, so do I understand correctly that the entire project site has an archaeological inventory survey?
Yeah. It actually has an early 1991, I think, archaeological survey. Then there was additional testing and mapping of features for the first AIS. And so that was CSH as well. Then there's the 5 acre AIS that we did, and then the 76 acre AIS. So there's at least 4 studies for that project.
And they're not combined into one final report. They're actually 4 different reports.
They are 4 different reports. Our reports, they have an extensive documentation of all of the previous archaeology stuff that was done. So there are descriptions and maps, and we show what they did, and then the additional stuff that we did.
Okay, thank you. That helps clarify for me what's happening here.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. Do any commissioners have any other questions? Commissioner Louis, please.
For Glenn, did we get to see the 2020 AIS or the green part?
I don't know that
Or
it
we
was,
just got the red?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I don't know what we, because I didn't submit things to the CRC, so I don't know if the AISs were submitted or not, but I know they're public record. They do have them.
Okay.
I can email them to you or put them in a Dropbox so you guys can go over them, look at them.
Please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Escott. Sorry, one more question. In the red area, the 5 acre parcel that we're looking at, I believe Commissioner Nicole Louie and myself visited that area with you at the end of our site meeting, and that there may have appeared to be evidence of walls, possibly a trail. Can you please clarify if that element or feature shows up in the AIS?
Yes, they were recorded as ranch walls because that's what they are. And there are some kind of ag features nearby, so they were recorded together. We didn't call it out as a ranch road or possible access easement or something like that. It doesn't show up anywhere as an access easement, but you can tell that it looks like it's kind of rough, but it was probably used for some access or for travel, you know, for the ranch. And of course, we showed where it was closed off between the 2 walls, and the ranch road now goes north of that 2 walls. So yeah, it is in the 5 acre AIS.
Thank you.
Yep.
One more question. Sorry.
Go for it.
Sorry, Chair. Glenn, for the possible work stone, are you going to take a look at it and possibly collect or leave in place, or?
Yeah, I did go back and have a look at it.
Okay.
I can't see any wear pattern on it.
Okay.
Yeah, you know how sometimes as the lava inflates, there's a gas pocket, or you've been in lava tubes. There's smooth, and that's what it is.
I kind of thought so, but I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, I wanted to be sure too.
Yeah, please.
I never like missing on things, so.
Okay.
Thank you. I have Commissioner Kealoha with a question. Go ahead. Sorry, Commissioner, we need your mute turned off. Sorry.
Okay, can you hear me okay? All right, thank you, Sorry, Chair. I have a couple of questions. One is for Mr. Keone Kalave. I want to mahalo you for that great presentation. And I guess I have kind of more of a broader, like ahupua'a kind of question about the area, and that's sort of curious about any holua slides within Holualoa, like the distribution of those, where they might be located, if any, and any mana'o you might have about just generally about within this ahupua'a in this area, since we've been talking a lot about Holualoa. I wonder if you could kind of share some mana'o on that.
Okay, so Holualoa, the ahupua'a, I haven't kind of like entirely went throughout the place. Because when I do research, I'm invited. I just don't go into somebody else's ahupua'a, because I'm from Puna. And the only, if I doing research like in Ka'u, I would talk to Puna first and get permission and then go out and look at the place. But what I can tell you is that north of Honolulu, Keahu'olu, there's a beautiful slide out there. There's a slide out there, and there's also a Mokamakai trail. And the walls are probably about a little over a meter high, and it's not paved. So that's two really good examples of a Holua slide and also a Mokamakai trail. Yeah. So I've been actually working there for approximately 4 years. I run my summer field school there for 6 weeks with high school students. So, yeah. Hopefully I can answer your questions.
Yeah, no, you did. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was just curious about the name. If it indicates something about the number of Hulua slides that may have been in the area, and I see that there is a heiau in this area, and probably others as well. And I guess one of the things when I look at kind of like broader, not just the project area, but the places around the project area, it's heavily populated and rapid urban expansion that's happening within this area. And I can see why the public is concerned about losing more open space and potentially losing some of this information that's captured in trails and other features on the Aina. And I guess that brings me to my next question. And I really appreciated Mr. Edscott's presentation. But I guess I just wanted to clarify for myself, because I remember reading some correspondence between Jackson Bauer and these organizations. And I just wondered if Jackson, if you're still on, if you had any mana'o about the nature of trails within the project area and also beyond the project area as well. And Kalamai, if I missed this, but I was also curious about if any of these trails, like, we have the map of the project area, but how many, do any of them pass like by or near the heiau that is located to the south? So if you're on, Jackson, I wonder if you could share some thoughts.
Commissioner, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks. Good questions. I'll start with that second one. Yeah, there's several trails that go through this broader area. One that goes just outside the Kealakova'a, which the heiau also shares that name. That goes just outside this particular project area. And then there's a couple, what we saw in the maps that Glenn had shown in the Munn property. There's a trail going up to the road burn. There is other maps that show the trail that Commissioner Spielman mentioned on our site visit between the walls that continue Melka. Different maps, I think it was 1914 maps. And then more broadly in the general area, well, all across Hawaii, but in the general area in Kona, in the Ahupua system, it's not uncommon to see Ahupua boundary trails, these Mokamakai trails, and also trails within the Ahupua, depending on how wide the Ahupua determines the number, connecting these Malka resources, whether it be canoe logs or other forestry products. And then, of course, in the middle zone, like this area here would have been agricultural fields. And then, of course, Makai or coastal villages. And then also lateral trails, primarily on the coast, and then where today's Mamalahoa Highway, there was a trail through there. Trails in theory run through these areas. What was your first question in particular? I want to make sure I answer that specifically.
Just if you had any additional information on the nature of the trails, in terms of their prehistoric versus historic nature, but based on your knowledge of the area, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, got it. I just want to make sure I answered you correctly. Yeah, So the historic trails, and I'll just use that term broadly. Historic trails can take many forms. We have the first trails, the pedestrian trails that were built over hundreds of years. Can be anything from stepping stones, especially through lava, so more comfortable stepping stones. It could be beaten down or different lava to make it more walkable. Could be just kapai, where you're just moving the loose stones aside so you have a smoother route to walk on. In forested areas or areas with soil, which then had forest, it's clearing just the vegetation. The ground itself is easy enough to walk on. And then in Pahoehoe, the ground is already smooth, so there's not a lot of constructed trail. If it's used a lot, you might see wear patterns from just feet on that landscape over thousands of years, but sometimes not. So what does that translate to today? What do we see on the landscapes today? And that's an interesting thing. And Glenn made some interesting points in this particular area that of the cattle history and what we see today of a lot of the cattle walls and things like that, which I would agree with. What it doesn't tell us, though, and that's kind of the limitation of some of the modern archaeological methods, is it doesn't inform us of what was there in the past. So that's where where I come in and kind of playing the detective work of trying to piece together some of the clues that might give us an idea of what was there, not what we see today, but what are some hints of what was there, that the cattle walls and the might have modified. So a good example of what I was looking for on the site visit would have been like what we see in the Judd Trail, which is the next or 2 Ahufua south of this. There's a small remnant of Judd Trail that is intact, which is nice. But it's a very similar situation where you have these taller, wide spacing double wall cattle walls. But what's interesting is if you look really closely within that, you'll start to see kind of a more formal trail construction of some curbing. So what's neat is you're looking at different evolutions, right? You're looking at this the 1850s trail with the curbing about maybe 4 feet wide, and then later on, or for slightly different purposes, widened with these taller cattle walls. And then likely Judd Trail. In fact, we know from oral accounts and stories that the Judd Trail was, even though it was built in 1850s, is based on much older pedestrian alignments. So applying that, and we see this kind of idea in other places as well in Kona. So applying that to this area, plus some of the maps and stuff, kind of allude to the trail here. On the last site visit, I did see what I believe some of that kind of older curving between some of these walls, a very small section. I don't know if she's here today, but Commissioner Keakealani was there when I pointed it out. So you might want to refer to her observance of that. I have pictures as well, but yeah, so that might be an example of remnant trail that obviously doesn't exist now, but maybe some remnants do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. So I get your.
Thank you.
I'd like to call on Commissioner Nicole Louie again, if you will unmute.
Aloha, Kealoha. I just wanted to share, I noticed you brought up the name Holualoa and possibly making reference to Holua, but in my research of genealogy for the last 30+ years and in correspondence with other genealogists like Analu Josephides and Arlene Hudman and Kepa Malley, Holualoa was a real person, and he married La'aloa, and he had many children, and some of their descendants still live in Kona. In fact, one of the families still carried the name Holualoa. I think they've relocated to the mainland though since my last talking with them. So I just wanted to share that with you in terms of the name Holualoa, and thank you for bringing that up. And another comment I want to make, our Malihini friends, they say they don't want somebody else building their home in their backyard. Who will stop them from building their big, beautiful home? And nobody stopped them. So why can't somebody else come and build their home? And you know, the affordable housing thing, there's a clause in there that says they're gonna check your income. And that's the only way you're gonna be able to apply for one of these affordable housing projects. And I forgot what it's called, free housing something or something like that, but I can't remember quite the term that was used. And it says that anyone can come and live from the mainland, and they can apply for these affordable housing projects. So why are we going to have more things that put a stump in front of our people from apply Hawaiian people from applying for this affordable housing project when other people from the mainland can come? So why are we going to have more affordable housing projects? That's what I'm just saying. That's just a comment from me. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Louie. Are there any other questions by commissioners at this time for the presenters? I have one question. I'm not sure if it's Mr. Arai or possibly Mr. Matsukawa that might want to answer. But going back to the public testimony we heard earlier today, and I believe came in writing to us, are there affordable housing credits on this project?
This project, the project itself is not being presented as an affordable housing project. It is basically a mid-market project of both fee and for rent type of units. So in essence, and I don't know if this is the proper term, but you're sort of like trying to provide housing for the middle market, the gap group. You know, anyway, maybe there's others who can probably better present it, but I should note that the project, because it's a change of zone and we're asking for a time extension, there is an affordable housing requirement that is typically embedded within the zoning ordinance, and usually it's 20% of the total number of units must satisfy the county's affordable housing requirements as prescribed in Chapter 11 of the Hawaii County Code. So the applicants can satisfy those requirements in a number of ways. It was initially electing to satisfy those requirements by the way of affordable housing credits, but that the purchase of those credits hasn't been consummated as of yet. So again, the applicant will be willing to explore opportunities in coordination with the County Office of Housing and Community Development on the best way to satisfy its affordable housing obligation. So hopefully I address your kind of question.
Thank you, Mr. Arai. I have one follow-up question for the testimony we've heard about for PONC. Is there any opportunity that the landowners would be considering a PONC agreement or sale of sorts? Has that been revisited at all?
I would have to defer to ownership to address that particular question.
Okay. And who do we have here from ownership that might be able to represent feedback?
We have Mr. Higashi, Mr. Willie.
Mr. Higashi, I'll reach out to you on this question, please. And Mr. Wheelock, you're welcome to join in. Is there any revisiting of we'll call it the PONC conversation? I believe we just came up during a prior review. Wasn't the last meeting, it might have been the one before. Any insights you can share on that would be greatly appreciated.
Hi, it's Richard Wheelock. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thanks for everybody's time. We have not discussed that recently, no. Our goal has been for 7 years now to deliver the over 500 homes for local families that's been promised since 1984. And that's what we're still working on. If the community and the government wants us to do work with PONC at the end of that process, then that's something we will consider doing. But 450 working class homes and 67 affordables, which includes the affordables that were never delivered for the existing Kona Vistas projects. We're going to fulfill their obligation, even though we didn't build the project. That's currently our goal. If for some reason we can't get to that goal, then we would talk about PONC again then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheelock. And you mentioned local families. Does this go back to address Commissioner Louis' question about how our applicants reviewed or considered?
Chair, this is Deputy Corporation Counsel Sinclair Salas Ferguson. So I just want to remind the board about their powers and duties. So the reason this commission even is here today is to review and comment on archaeological reports submitted as part of the development proposals to the various counties and agencies. So, the commission is really here to ask questions about the historical, cultural, and archaeological matters before them. So I just feel, the affordable housing aspects and all these other things that you're kind of straying from your authority. So I would advise the board to focus on those aspects, and then to think about at the end of this information gathering process, which is what you guys are doing right now, the board may, I'm just going to read this to kind of remind you guys so you can have this in the back of your head. The board can request further information regarding the project or vote on a recommendation, which may include an opinion as to whether the project is to likely impact a historic asset or will likely have a limited but acceptable impact on a historic asset, or will likely have a substantial impact on a historic asset. And then the commission is required to forward their recommendation, including possible modifications, mitigation measures, or suggestions regarding the proposal to the proposing agency, which would be the Planning Commission. So all of this commission's comments and review are strictly related to historical, cultural, and archaeological matters. The affordable housing aspects and a few other aspects, that's for the planning department and the Planning Commission and the housing authorities to consider. Thank you. I just wanted to give that reminder.
Thank you, Court Counsel. And thank you. I was going to say something very similar, and I just wanted to finish off what Sinclair just added with a suggestion that as we move towards a conclusion, one way or another, that what Sinclair just read is, and please correct me, Court Counsel, but looking at the resources, cultural, historical, or archaeological, that may or may not be impacted, and to what degree, and based on that opinion, it needs to have a nexus to your recommendations about what a mitigative matter may be. So, or if you can't come to that conclusion, requesting more information. But I think it may be a good thing to follow, to form an evidence-based, consensual opinion about this project's level of impact to the resources, and then develop any recommendations or modifications, suggestions, mitigation measures that you want either the applicant or the Planning Commission to consider prior to them making their decision on the time extension. So there should be a sort of a rational connection between the recommendations and the opinionated impacts to these resources. I hope that makes sense. Court Counsel, I hope you think that's at least consistent with what you.
Yeah, so I mean, in a nutshell, this project proposal was forwarded to the commission, the Cultural Resources Commission, to provide your expert opinion on the archaeological reports attached to the proposal in front of the Planning Commission, and to provide any other opinion this commission may have as to that project. And your rules give examples of things that you can provide, your recommendation, including, any modifications, mitigation measures, or other suggestions regarding the proposal. So at some point, somebody is going to have to make a motion to do something. I make a motion that we provide the planning commission with this mitigation measure, and then somebody seconds that motion, and then the board will discuss that motion. During that discussion, you guys can, the board can put forth other ideas like, okay, I think maybe we should recommend this as well as that modification that was in the original motion, or whatever you guys decide. And then somebody can make a motion to amend that main motion to get all of the recommendations that the board wants to make in there. And then at some point, the board will have to make a vote on that. And then somebody from the commission is going to have to draft those recommendations, whatever, if the board does decide on something to be forwarded to the planning commission. And then we're going to have to meet again to vote on that document that will be forwarded to the planning commission. So does anyone have any questions on the process? Any of the board members, commission members? Okay. Thank you. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for the conversation to go that way. That wasn't my intent.
Oh, thank you. I'll step out here and say, I think the Hawaiian people are a cultural asset, and that absolutely we should be having this conversation, but I understand Corp Council's opinion. I'll respect that. Also, it was just in conversation with Mr. Wheelock bringing up the point as something that was a positive for the project. So I just wanted to confirm on that status. So at this time, does anybody, do any commissioners have any other questions for the presenters? And if not, then I think I'd like to ask for a motion. And just to reiterate what Corp Council stated, I'll read it here again. This is in accordance with CRC Rule 4-3B, B as in boy, a request for more information about the project, or a recommendation including any possible modifications, mitigation measures, or suggestions and comments regarding the proposal. The recommendation may include an opinion as to whether the project is 1, not likely to impact a historic asset, 2, will likely have a limited but acceptable impact on a historic asset, or 3, will likely have a substantial impact on a historic asset. The motion should include direction to staff to prepare the commissioner's recommendation for chair signature. So thank you, staff, for writing up the recommendation. And so I'd like to open it up if any commissioners would like to propose a motion at this time. And I've been advised I'm not allowed to or shouldn't, so I'm going to defer to my fellow commissioners.
I'll propose an initial motion, Chair.
Thank you.
I'd like to propose that the developers reconsider their development plan to try and preserve larger open space that perhaps includes the Malcolm Mackay trails that go through the area, and as well as some of the cultural landscape and archaeological sites that were documented as part of the AIS. Thank you.
I like Commissioner Clark's motion a lot, and I think it's important. I think through this process, we've learned a lot about the potential trails or alignments through the parcel that weren't in the document. And
sorry, Commissioner Kurashima, this is so right now you can make a second and then you can go into discussion. So the motion on the floor, there's a motion on the floor from Commission Member Clark, and so a board member needs to second that motion.
I second.
Okay, so now the board can engage in discussion.
okay, so everything I just said, and then thank you, Nicole. and that I don't know if it's possible at this point in the process, but to capture some of the knowledge that has been shared about the potential trails from Commissioner Louis, from other testifiers, from Kama'aina of Olualoa, to be integrated into the CIA, and that is recorded there, so that can then inform how these landscapes are preserved in the development plan in the future.
Are we in discussion, Corp Counsel, on this motion?
Yeah, so you're in discussion, and I think what I heard, sorry, because I did interrupt Commissioner Kurashima, but I think she was saying that she thought some other things should be added. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I could paraphrase by saying that further testimony around the trail alignment and significance within the project area be integrated into the CIA, in addition to map motion.
So procedurally, so yes, the board is in discussion right now, and then so Commission Member Kurashima is saying her opinion on the motion. At some point, you guys can discuss it, and somebody can make a motion to amend the main motion to add further comments into that main motion.
Thank you. So we're still in discussion on the standing motion by Matt, seconded by Commissioner Nicole, and added to discussion by Natalie. I think I see Commissioner Louis' hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to attach to Natalie's recommendations. Yeah, that the my consultation can be added into that, Glenn, yeah, to help expand on and to bring a further completion to the work or the report. Sorry. That's all.
Thank you. I don't know that we're at the amending point yet, but in terms of discussion, I just remind that we want to ask in the motion to include direction to staff to prepare the commissioner's recommendation for chair signature. We should make that part of the final motion, please.
Staff would ask for the commission to also consider some clarifying direction for staff. And in addition to the trails and these larger open spaces, the natural resources that are on site, such as the drainage and the water, to understand, because what I'm hearing is sort of a move for this recommendation be to more sensitively integrate the development design with the natural features, historical features, and history of the property. So as I know there's been a lot of discussion about a slide or a trail, but I think that, pardon the pun, but a river runs through it, at least some part. And I'm sure that had cultural significance at some point. So as you're forming this motion, staff would just ask for that to be included one way or another as to which direction. Again, we don't cover floodplain management in the CRC, but I do understand there's a resource that we could, that this commission may opine on. Thanks, that's it.
I'd like to open it up to commissioners for any more points of discussion on the motion on the floor. And I don't see anybody raising their hand. Am I allowed to amend the motion? Corp Counsel?
Yeah, the chair, I mean, can.
Okay, please, I'd like to amend the motion to Matt's motion to include those comments by Natalie, which I had here as that landscapes are preserved in the development plan, with further testimony on trail alignment within the project area to be integrated to the CIA. And I'd like to amend the motion to include direction to staff to prepare the commissioner's recommendation for chair's signature. Kevin, I'm going to default to someone else to address your comments. I'm not sure I'm clear on them.
So Chair, you made a motion to amend, so you need a second.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you, Nicole.
And then you're gonna need discussion on the motion to amend and then a vote on the motion to amend.
I guess my question is, are we asking that to use Kevin's language, they more sensitively integrate the natural, historical, and cultural features into the development plan in consultation with the community, or is that a separate, they add consultation to the CIA? I suppose I need clarity on that. Or both.
If I can call on Commissioner Natalie to weigh in on this.
I'm not sure on the like the process side if it's too late to amend a submitted CIA, or if it's possible to include like community interviews into this motion for more sensitive development planning. I guess I would defer to someone who knows more about that than I.
The specific recommendations can come from the Leeward Planning Commission, correct? For how they do it? We can provide suggestions to them.
Yeah, maybe we can just say and that, yeah, like oral history interview or community interviews or Hawaiʻi interviews are integrated into the sensitive planning and design.
Yeah, as I understand it, the communication back to the Planning Commission is going to be our recommendation for them to consider before they make their final decision. They've asked this commission to review the project, but the ultimate decision makers on the time extension, that formal action is the Planning Commission. Yeah.
Did they have an opportunity to interview?
We're getting to that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Aaron.
Yes.
Chair Aaron. So in the case of the landscape, I know what Matt's talking about on Natalie. So the river, I noticed Kevin brought up the stream bed. It does go through the property. So that gets included in our discussion or recommendation for protection. I think it is a cultural resource, and I think it needs to be protected when development starts. So I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, yeah, the stream bed is a cultural part of the landscape. It is cultural, and it is a kahawaii, and the Hawaiians did use that on this side of the land. It's the Kaiapua lands, and the Kaiapua lands had all the riverbeds on the top, the streams that go to Kahului, the stream that comes down to Hololoa, and all the different sections. So yeah, that makes sense. So thank you. I don't know if I'm.
I think what you just shared, Commissioner Louis, is part of the testimony that needs to be in a document like a CIA, is what my comment is getting at, is that we need to understand the thoughts and the understandings of Kama'aina of this place, genealogically, connected? And if it's not written down somewhere, how will it be integrated into the plan? So I don't know where it needs to be written down or where it should be recorded, but I think that there needs to be a document tied to this project that lives in perpetuity that then can be utilized to do sensitive plan.
And Mr. Sinclair, sorry, Corp Counsel, is that would be a motion to request more information about the project?
I'm sorry, you guys are still deliberating on the motion to amend right now, so that's what needs to be taken care of first, the motion to amend, and then, you know, see where that takes you. And I think a good idea would be to repeat the main motion on the floor so everybody understands what that motion is. And then you can address that question I think you had about requesting further information.
Thank you, Corp Counsel. Often we get involved in private practice and forget about the rules of procedure. So thank you for keeping us on the straight and narrow for this. Can we get staff to read a current reading of the amended motion on the floor?
Let's see what Kim has so far. That's what this is for.
So Matt said that he wants developers to reconsider a larger open space and add the Malcolm-Mackay trails and other documented sites into the AIS. And Nicole added that she wanted to have more sensitive planning and design to be considered, and to add oral history from Kama'aina and others into the CIA, which would include comments like Nicole provided regarding the stream bed.
And then my amendment?
To include staff preparation of the communication to the Planning Commission. Sorry, Aaron, I'm not sure if I'm missing something else from you.
And I think my question to Kevin is, Kevin, you added some thoughts on that, and I may not have understood it correctly. Are you asking us to clarify the direction to planning?
No, I think what Nicole just mentioned was what I was getting at and sort of asking for some clarity on, as far as what I heard from the original motion on the table, which was to preserve larger open spaces and basically some design recommendations to consider.
And would it be fair, commissioners, please weigh in, would it be fair to suggest that the stream bed would be part of that, would be one of those element aspects of the property?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is it possible to have two separate motions, Sinclair? So we have a motion for the first part and a motion for the second part so that it's not as confusing.
I think what would be the best thing to do is to maybe just go by issue. So that first motion, maybe so it seems like you guys do want to make some recommendations to the Planning Commission. So there's that first motion, which was submitted by Commissioner Clark. So maybe the cleaner way to do it is just to go motion by motion, issue by issue. So maybe somebody, so that second motion to amend, Chair Spielman, you can make a motion to defer it indefinitely. You can get a second, you can vote on that and defer it indefinitely. And then you guys can vote on that first motion provided by Commissioner Clark. And then somebody else can make a motion to add another recommendation And then that way you guys can go issue by issue, and that way we're not stuck, what the heck is going on, which is kind of what I feel like right now, right? So, Chair, if you can make a motion to defer your motion to amend indefinitely, somebody seconds that, you vote on that, and then we can read Commissioner Clark's motion again, so everybody's very clear on that motion. And then you guys can discuss if you need to, and then vote on that motion. And then we can set that aside, and that will be one of the recommendations going to the Planning Commission. Then somebody else can say, hey, what about this other recommendation? And then make a motion on that.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Sinclair. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to on my amendment and to defer indefinitely. I need a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Do I need to call vote for this?
You can just say all in favor, say aye.
All in favor, commissioners, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Motion carries, yeah.
So we're back to Mr. Clark's first motion on the table that's been seconded. And if we could read just Mr. Clark's motion as it currently stands.
Sorry.
1 second.
Do you need me to restate it, Chair? Is that what you're asking?
Sorry, no, I was just asking if planning staff can reread Matthew Clark's current motion that's been seconded.
What I originally captured was it was a motion for the applicants to preserve larger open spaces within the project design. That was about as general as I captured. But I defer to Commissioner Clark if that's cool. Kim, is that consistent with
That
you?
captures the essence of it. Thank you.
And my understanding is we have a first and a second on this motion from Commissioner Clark. Do I need to call for more discussion, Corp Counsel?
If you like, if there's no further discussion, you can ask for a vote.
Okay. Is there any further discussion from commissioners on the motion on the floor? Thank you all for bearing with us. I don't see any discussion. So at this time, I'd like to call for a vote on Commissioner Clark's motion, seconded by Commissioner Nicole. And I'm going to default to the language Kevin just read.
And in doing so, I would be more than happy for any additional direction or discussion regarding open spaces. If we can capture within this motion that includes, potential connections or water features or what have you, again, historic assets, then that would help. Otherwise, I think what Sinclair said is we can add additional motions.
My initial motion was to clarify was to, as Kevin helped me put it, is to include more open space in the development sign that more sensibly integrates the natural, historical, and cultural features of the landscape, including trails and archaeological sites into the development plan. And I would add in consultation with the community, but I think that's the next part of our thing.
I'm sorry, I'm not writing fast enough to get it back in as nice a way as you just said it, Commissioner Clark, but I'd like to use that language as the motion. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Thanks, Kevin. At this time, I'd like to call for a vote on the motion on the floor from Commissioner Clark. All those in favor say aye.
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 Well, you need a roll call for that one.
Oh, sorry, I need a roll call. Okay, if we can do a roll call vote, please, staff.
Yeah. Well, let me get my roll list. Chair Spielman.
Aye.
Commissioner Louis.
Aye.
Commissioner Kinney. Aloha. Aye or nay?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Oh, aye.
All right. Chair, Vice Chair Kirishima
Aye.
and Commissioner Mahoney
Aye.
and Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Motion carries unanimously. I'll call on Commissioner Kirishima. Would you like to make a motion at this time?
Sure. I think I wordsmithed it in that break. So I move to recommend further documentation of lineal descendant and Kama'aina knowledge of the cultural resources of the project area, inclusive of trails. Period. And maybe I know I have to need a second, but I'm not sure if I need to add the whole line about, to be, the purpose of this would be to be integrated into the planning and design. But I think I'll just stop there where I had my period.
Could you repeat that one more time and we'll just get it on the.
I move to recommend further documentation of lineal descendant and Kama'aina knowledge of the cultural resources in the project area, inclusive of trails.
And I'll call for a second on that motion. No second at this time, but
I second.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. So I call for discussion on the motion from Commissioner Kirishima, moving to recommend further documentation of lineal descendants in Kama'aina for cultural resources of items on the site like trails. I'm butchering that last part of the motion, but sorry. I think my one discussion question is, are stream beds to be included in that trail conversation as an element of the site?
I think that's captured in the first motion.
Matt, do you have Mana'o?
No, I think I definitely agree with you that we should include that into the preservation of the open space. I think the stories are important to include with that areas that could be created, especially for Malcolm Mackay access and the stories of the past. And working with the community in this case, I think seems like a good idea to try and protect portions of this and see if the developers and the community can work together to come up with a solution that works for everybody.
So I have a part of the discussion. So that includes the stream bed.
My original motion would have included all the natural features of the landscape too.
3 minutes is nothing.
Also, would that include native trees? No.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
In the first motion, yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's very helpful.
And then Chair, can I just say one thing too right now? I think so, you have that motion by Clark that's already been approved. So I think the process, this is a suggestion. I'm not sure how this commission conducts its recommendations. I'm just filling in here for Jean this morning, but I would suggest that Commissioner Clark draft some language that articulates his suggestion, because it's going to be a suggestion that's going to be put forth in front of the Planning Commission, and that he can send that more detailed suggestion and recommendation to the Cultural Commission staff, and then Commissioner Kuroshima's motion, if it does pass, she could do the same thing, you know, write it up on paper and send it to the Planning Cultural Commission staff. And then at the next meeting, the Cultural Commission staff can put that together. And then at the next meeting, you guys will be able to review that and then vote on that as the final document to be sent to the commission. Is that kind of, Mr. Sullivan, is that how you guys have done it in the past, or?
We have, well, so my experience, frankly, on this board is limited. I believe the last time, if I'm recalling a project, I believe it was 106 for Hakalau Bridge. I just carried their motion language forward, developed it into a letter, which was signed and sent on. I believe your recommendation provides less room for error, as far as, you know, making sure that it's verbatim approved. So I don't see any problem with that. I don't find that to be inconsistent with what this board's done now. To sort of formulate it and then come back again, if that's
Right, because right now it's kind of like big picture. You guys are agreeing, okay, we want this in there, but then the nitty gritty, if there is to be some more nitty gritty, can be finalized at the next meeting.
Yeah, it would, yeah, if the way I'm taking this is that it would, in essence, extend the discussion to the next CRC meeting.
Correct.
Work on the formal transmittal of that communication. Right? Okay. Yeah, if Corp Counsel thinks that's the better way, absolutely. Yeah.
I'd appreciate that too, just for timing here. I'm on dad duty. I gotta go pick up a kid here. So that would be wonderful if we could do that, please. Do we have a standing? Do we need to vote on Commissioner Kuroshiki's motion?
On the second.
So I'd like to call for a roll call vote on Commissioner Natalie's motion.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Vice Chair Kurishima?
Are we voting?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, aye.
Commissioner Louis?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Did you say aye?
Sorry, aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Commissioner Kinney?
Aye.
And Chair Spielman?
Aye.
Thank you. Unanimous motion passes.
Thank you. Staff, can I get your assistance? Where do we go next? Is it administrative matters?
So, Chair, can I just interrupt you a little bit real quick? So, are you wanting to defer this to the next meeting for continued decision making, or I guess I want to ask you, you know, is there anyone else that has anything that they would want to be added into that recommendation? I think maybe it's a good idea to get that, or you can defer it to the next meeting for continued decision making. It'll be deferred anyway. It's up to you.
I can ask for everybody's ongoing patience with this application. I would like to defer to the next meeting, pick this back up and continue with the review of the motions that have been voted on, as well as any other discussion that might come out at that time. Do we need to vote on that? Do I need to make a motion? Oh, okay.
They just did it. We can't.
Could I ask for a motion to defer the discussion on this agenda item to the next meeting?
I I make a motion to,
Give me a,
to-
so they can finish talking and so
Now
the,
it's time to ask.
it's not.
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nicole and Commissioner Mahoney. I appreciate that. All in favor, do we need a roll call vote?
No, you can do all in favor.
Thank you. All in favor of continuing discussion to the next CRC meeting, say aye.
Aye.
I know what you're asking.
No, it's
and
not okay.
Aye.
If
Uh,
this
aye.
closure of this meeting,
Any
representation.
opposed, say nay.
There's been representation.
I
and the
will contest
final-
this. I will call the mayor tonight.
Great, the final
Great.
decision's not made yet.
This is.
You're,
At this time, we're gonna continue discussion of agenda item number 2 to the next meeting. And just for clarity, staff, is it administrative matters that I move to next?
Please represent and be fair.
Go ahead.
yes,
be fair.
administrative matters is next,
Be
Chair
fair.
Spielman.
There are
And then,
requests.
Chair Spielman, can I just say one more thing? If Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Kuroshima can get that language to the staff, and then they can present it at the next meeting. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Sinclair. Much appreciated.
It's important. Every time is important.
That's right.
You said it and you will hear it. And it's not okay. And they will know it is not okay.
Oh, my God.
Absolutely.
Chair, maybe if you can just continue through go to the agenda to administrative matters.
Administrative matters, please. I'd like to go to administrative matters. This would be the approval of minutes from May 10th, 2023. We will now move to administrative matters and the approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the Cultural Resources Commission meeting held on May 10th, 2023?
I move to approve the minutes held from the meeting held on May 10th, 2023.
I second the motion, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Natalie and Commissioner Matt. Much appreciated. It was moved by Commissioner Kuroshima and seconded by Commissioner Clark. Any discussion on the approval of minutes? My only discussion point is at Kalamai, I was in jury duty. I would never have missed a meeting given the opportunity to attend, and jury duty sucked me in for 4 days. So it goes. I didn't have a legitimate excuse to be disqualified or exempt. Otherwise, I would have taken it. So all in favor of the motion to approve the meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed, say nay. Let it show that the motion's been passed unanimously. The next meeting, and we're trying to hold these on monthly occasions now. The reason why we switched up this week's meeting was because of commissioner availability. That's the only reason why we moved it to the 3rd week instead of the 2nd week. The next meeting will be Wednesday, July 12th, 2023. At 10 a.m. And I'm moving into adjournment. This concludes the items on this agenda. Can I please have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Louie and Commissioner Mahoney. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I don't expect any, but any opposed? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. I thank you all for your time, the staff, the public. Thank you for attending, the commissioners. I appreciate it very much, and we will see you next month. Aloha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners. Appreciate your time and effort. Aloha.
Aloha.
Mahalo staff.
Aloha. Hey, Matt.
Yeah. Hello.